My name is Sheriff David Rowan, County District 9. I've been with the department for 23 years now. I've handled my share of strange things, domestic calls gone bad, wrecks that didn't make sense, and missing people that turn up miles from where they were supposed to be, but nothing, and I mean nothing, ever sat in my file like mile marker 66. It's a lonely stretch of highway, Route 41. 21 miles of Tulane Road, cutting through wheat fields and marshland. No lights, no gas stations. Just a sound of wind scraping across the road signs. People here call it the humming road, though most can't tell you why. The locals avoid it after dark. Truckers say their radios fuzz out near the old billboard that used to advertise some long-closed diner. Around early fall, I got a stack of reports. 3 missing travelers, 2 from out of state. All last seen driving west between miles 62 and 68. That area is my district, so the task fell to me. Standard patrol, nightly check-ins, record anything unusual. The chief called it a precaution, but I could tell from his tone he didn't believe a word of the rumors either. The first few nights were uneventful. I'd start the shift at 10, fill the thermos, check the shotgun, and drive. The radio crackled with the usual chatter. Units logging in, a noise complaint from town, a coyote sighting near the river bend. Then silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy in your ears, like the world's holding its breath. Out there, under that black sky, the world feels smaller. The cornfields move in waves when the wind hits them. The white lines on the road flash past like pulses. You start to forget what time it is. Just you, the headlights, and that hum. I didn't notice it at first. The hum, it wasn't mechanical. It wasn't the engine or the tires. It sounded almost alive, a low vibration, faint enough to make you doubt it's there. When I switched off the cruiser for a moment, it would stop. Then, a few minutes later, it would return right beneath the ground. I reported it during my nightly call-in. Dispatch told me maybe it was power lines or old piping, but there aren't any lines out there, not for miles. I checked. The 4th night, I stopped near the actual marker, a green metal post half buried in gravel. The numbers stenciled in fading white paint. The moon was full, pale, and low enough to light the ditches. I left the engine idling, stepped out, and leaned against the car door. Everything smelled like cold dust and wet dirt. That hum was stronger there. Not loud, just constant, like the vibration before thunder. Only there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I shone my flashlight across the field. Nothing. No cars, no tracks, no sign of struggle. But when I turned back toward the road, I realized my cruiser's headlights were flickering. Faint, like something was walking in front of them even though the pavement was empty. I took a few steps forward, boots crunching on gravel. The air changed, heavier, stiller. The kind of stillness that comes right before something moves. I told myself it was the wind. I even said it out loud, it's just the wind. That's what you do on night patrol. You talk to yourself to keep sane. Then I heard the radio click, a burst of static, followed by a voice I didn't recognize. It wasn't dispatch, and it wasn't one of our units. It said, Unit 9, you're off course. I froze. My badge number is Unit 9, but the voice, it sounded like me. Older, slower, and too calm. I picked up the mic. This is 9. Identify yourself. Static, then the hum again, deeper this time, rattling the dashboard. I turned off the radio completely, and for the first time in years, I felt that old pressure in my chest. Fear, raw and simple. I got back in the car, shut the door, and drove. The road ahead looked endless. No signs, no exits, just asphalt unrolling like tape into the dark. The more I drove, the stronger that vibration became. I could feel it through the steering wheel now, like the heartbeat of the ground itself. After maybe 15 minutes, I realized I hadn't passed another marker. I should have hit mile 70 by then. But when my headlights cut across the next green sign, it said 66 again. Same dents, same bullet hole in the corner, same faded paint. I pulled over, checked my GPS. It showed nothing, just a gray line looping back on itself. I killed the engine and stepped outside. The night was dead quiet again. No wind this time. No sound except the faint hum coming from somewhere below. I walked a few feet into the field. The soil that was oddly soft, like it had been turned recently. When I crouched down and pressed my palm against it, the vibration came through clearer, steady, rhythmic, like breathing. It made my teeth ache. My flashlight flickered, and I heard something shift in the dirt. Not big, just a subtle movement, like someone turning under a blanket. I drew my gun, stepped back, and aimed low. Nothing, just earth. Then, right behind me, the radio clicked back on inside the cruiser. My own voice again, this time whispering, "You were supposed to stop sooner." I don't remember holstering the weapon. I just remember running back to the car, slamming the door, and peeling out so fast the gravel spit against the fenders. The hum rose with the engine, matching it perfectly, as if the sound lived inside the motor itself. When I hit the next sign, I looked, mile 66. Again, I must have circled that same stretch half a dozen times before dawn. Each time, the same post, the same hum, the same static on the radio. Around 6:30, the eastern sky began to lighten. The hum faded, slow and smooth, until it was gone. And just like that, the GPS fixed itself. I was 7 miles from town, facing east. The mile markers went back to normal. Number 66. Just 67, 68, 69. When I got back to the station, I filed my report. The chief skimmed it and told me to get some rest. He said I'd probably been tired, maybe mixed up the numbers in the dark. But I know what I saw. I even had the dash cam footage to prove it. Or so I thought. When I checked the feed later that day, it was blank, not static, not corrupted, just black. No headlights, no sound, no movement, for hours missing. A few nights later, I went back out there with Deputy Hensley. We drove the same route, same time, same equipment. Nothing happened. No hum, no static, no voices. Even the mile markers looked freshly painted, as if someone had replaced them overnight. But here's the part that keeps me up. Last week, we found a car in the marsh off mile 66. It belonged to one of the missing travelers, a teacher from Missouri, gone for nearly 3 months. No sign of her inside, but the seatbelt on the driver's side was still buckled, and the engine, after 3 months, was warm. I don't know what to file that under. There's no code for roads that move or voices that sound like your own. But every night since, when I drive that stretch, I turn the radio volume down low, because sometimes under the static, I still hear it. That same hum, slow and steady, like a breath drawn in between words that were never supposed to be spoken. And when I pass the real mile marker 66 now, I never stop. I don't even look at it, because part of me is scared that if I stare too long, the road might start breathing again. It's strange how silence can become part of your work. Most folks imagine police work as constant noise, sirens, shouting, radio chatter. But on the graveyard shift, it's mostly quiet. You learn to live inside that quiet. You start to hear your own pulse, your own breathing. And lately, something else. After that night on mile marker 66, I tried to move on. I told myself it was fatigue, maybe low blood sugar, maybe something wrong with the car. But that hum, it never really left. I could still hear it faintly when I turned on the cruiser radio, a low vibration under the static, steady and deep, like the engine had learned a new sound. 2 days after that first patrol, I was back on Route 41. Same schedule, same sky, same stretch of nothing. Dispatch had reassigned me to monitor late traffic. Said they'd been getting false reports of vehicles stopping and then vanishing before officers could locate them. The new order was to log every call that came through Channel 9, even if it sounded like a prank. Channel 9 isn't used much anymore. Back in the day, it was for emergency CB calls, truckers, stranded tourists, local farmers. But now, dead air. That's why it startled me when it came alive again. It was around 1:17 a.m. when it started. A low hum, almost like feedback, rolled through the speakers. I tapped the radio once. It stopped, then it started again. This time, it synced with something. Took me a few seconds to realize what. My heartbeat. Each thump in my chest had a faint echo through the static, like the radio was breathing with me. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Then the hum changed pitch, higher when I tensed up, slower when I tried to calm down, like it could feel me. Dispatch, this is Unit 9. Are you reading this interference on Channel 9? Nothing, just a low buzz and a faint rhythmic pulse. I leaned closer, listening, and under the hum, buried in that faint crackle, I could almost make out words. Whispers, maybe, but not clear enough to understand. Every time I turned the volume up, they faded. Every time I turned it down, they got louder. I kept my hand near the mic for a while, just waiting for something to happen. The road stretched out ahead, like a black ribbon. The fields on either side looked frozen, like they were holding still just to listen to. Then I heard it, a voice, not from dispatch, not from any frequency I recognized. Soft, close and low, don't stop again. I froze. The voice wasn't coming through the radio anymore. It was behind it, like it had crawled through the speaker. I switched channels. Nothing. Went back to 9 static, then faintly. You stopped too long last time. I gripped the mic. My throat felt tight. This is Sheriff Rowan, Unit 9. Identify yourself. Silence. Then the hum returned, stronger now, vibrating the whole dashboard. That's when I realized something. The hum wasn't coming from the speakers at all. It was coming from the car, from under my seat, maybe deeper. I pressed my boot to the floor and it trembled back like there was something alive in the steel. The steering wheel vibrated gently, in rhythm with my pulse again. And that same rhythm, that same impossible sync, made me feel watched. I pulled over near the same old marker. I know I shouldn't have, but I needed to check the equipment. Prove to myself it was real. As soon as I turned off the ignition, the hum stopped. The world went completely silent, as if the night itself was listening. When I stepped out, the air felt wrong. The moonlight was too bright, too white. It washed everything out, the fields, the asphalt, my hands. I could see my breath, even though the air wasn't cold. I crouched beside the cruiser and put my hand on the metal. No hum, just a faint warmth, like the car had been running for hours longer than it should have. Then the radio clicked again, this time without power. It shouldn't have been possible. The keys were in my pocket, but the static hissed faintly through the open driver's side window. When I leaned in to listen, I heard myself, not my voice exactly, more like the recording of it. The same tone, the same words I'd used in my last patrol report. This is Unit 9. There's something wrong with mile marker 66. Only this version didn't stop there. It kept going. I think it followed me back. I felt my knees weaken. I turned the radio knob all the way down. The voice stopped mid-sentence. Then I unplugged the unit completely, tossed the mic on the passenger seat, and just sat there breathing. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then the hum started again, but this time, it wasn't coming from the car or the radio. It was coming from me. I could feel it deep in my chest, echoing against my ribs. A slow vibration, faint but real, keeping perfect time with my pulse. Every heartbeat sent a little tremor up through my neck, into my ears, like my body was a tuning fork for something unseen. I drove straight back to the station. Didn't log the route. Didn't check in. I just went. The sound followed the whole way. Faint, steady, patient. When I finally parked, it faded again, like it didn't want anyone else to notice. I spent the rest of that night running diagnostics on the cruiser. Radio, alternator, battery, ground wiring, all clean. Not a trace of damage. No reason for the hum. I even had the mechanic test my heart rate monitor app. Each time it beeped, the faint vibration returned, synced perfectly, like whatever I'd heard on the highway had mapped itself onto me. The following night, the chief assigned me to desk duty until further notice. He said I'd been showing signs of fatigue. I didn't argue, but when I sat at that desk, try to catch up on paperwork, I could still hear it. The low vibration hiding beneath the hum of the fluorescent lights. I'd tapped my pen to drown it out. Didn't help. When I pressed my fingers to my wrist, I could feel the rhythm again, stronger than before. That night, I dreamt I was back in the car. Only this time, the radio was off, and the sound wasn't hum, it was breathing. Steady, shallow breathing, coming from under the dashboard. When I woke up, my chest felt bruised, like something had been pressing down on me. I tried not to sleep the next night. Sat up in the living room, the TV volume low, coffee going cold. Around 2 a.m., the house phone rang. I picked it up, half expecting dispatch. It was static, then faintly my own voice again. "You stopped too long last time." The line went dead. I pulled the phone cord out of the wall, sat there until sunrise. That's when I realized something. Every clock in the house had stopped at 1:17 a.m., the exact minute the hum began 2 nights earlier. I replaced the radio in the cruiser the next day. Brand new unit, factory sealed. But when I turned it on just once, just to check the channels, it was there. Channel 9, a faint hum, and buried in the static, the sound of slow, steady heartbeat. Mine, the week after the radio incident. The department started talking about pulling me off night patrol. They said it was for evaluation, but I knew what that meant. They thought I was losing it. I didn't argue. I just told them I'd finished the week out. Part of me wanted to prove I wasn't crazy. Part of me just wanted answers. That Friday night, the air was different. Heavy. The kind of weather that presses down on the land before a storm, but never actually rains. The sky had that washed-out gray glow that makes the road look wet, even when it's dry. I remember thinking the world looked staged. Too still, too quiet. I went back to Route 41. Mile marker 66. Of course I did. The hum had faded since that first night. But sometimes when the tires hit the right patch of road, I swore I could still feel it under me. It's funny how quickly fear becomes habit. You stop fighting it. You start listening for it. Like an old song you don't even like anymore. At around midnight, the new radio, clicked once. Just one sharp pop. Then silence. I waited. Then I heard it. Breathing. Not static this time. Breathing. Soft, shallow, and human. "Dispatch, this is Unit 9. Are you reading me?" No answer. Then a whisper through the channel. "She's still walking." The voice wasn't mine this time. It was a woman's, raspy, dry, like she hadn't spoken in days. I turned up the volume, but she was gone. That's when my headlights caught movement on the right shoulder. A figure, half collapsed near the ditch. I braked hard. Gravel sprayed. My pulse slammed in my ears as I stepped out, flashlight drawn. The beam caught the figure, a woman barefoot, clothes torn, her hair matted with mud. She was kneeling, one hand clutching the grass, the other shielding her eyes from my light. "Ma'am, this is Sheriff Rowan," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Are you hurt?" She didn't answer, just stared at me, blinking like she didn't recognize the world around her. Her skin looked pale under the dust, almost gray. I crouched closer. "Do you know where you are?" She shook her head. Her voice came out cracked, paper-thin. "I've been walking for days." I looked back toward my cruiser. There were no tracks on the road. The nearest house was 5 miles away. "Where did you come from?" I asked. She looked behind her, toward the fields. "There," she said. "I think." Her eyes darted back and forth, like she wasn't sure which way there even was. I radioed in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 9. I've got a possible missing person, female, late 20s, found near mile 66. Requesting EMS." Static. No response. I tried again. Nothing. She whispered. "It doesn't work out here." "How long have you been out here, ma'am?" I asked. She swallowed hard, voice trembling. "Since Tuesday." That stopped me cold. It was Friday. "What's your name?" "Lynn," she said after a long pause. "Lynn Carver." The name hit me like a nail. We'd had a missing persons alert the week before. Lynn Carver, 27. Last seen leaving her motel off Highway 12. She'd vanished on her drive west. That was 9 days ago. I told her to stay put while I got the blanket from my trunk. When I turned back, she was standing now, staring down the road, bare feet pressed into gravel like she didn't feel it cutting her. "Lynn, stay near the car," I called. She didn't answer. I approached slowly. Her lips moved. She was whispering something to herself. I caught only pieces. "Still walking, can't get off, it hums when it's near." I reached her shoulder gently. "Hey, you're safe now, okay? We're getting you help." She turned her head toward me, slow, like someone waking up underwater. Her eyes were bloodshot, ringed in gray. "You shouldn't have stopped," she said softly. Before I could ask what she meant, she collapsed. I caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was ice cold, her pulse weak but steady. I wrapped the blanket around her, carried her to the cruiser, and laid her in the back seat. The hum started again, not from the engine, from beneath the car. It pulsed through the frame, soft and even, like a distant generator. I tried the radio again. Dead. Cell signal. Nothing. Every channel was static. When I looked in the rear view mirror, Lynn's eyes were open again. She was watching me. Not panicked, just watching. "Are you okay?" I asked. Her lips barely moved. "Do you hear it?" I froze. The hum. She nodded. "It's under us," she whispered. "It never stops." I started the engine. "We're getting you to the hospital." She shook her head violently. "No, don't drive it. It'll wake up." I ignored her and pulled onto the road. As the tires rolled, the hum deepened. Louder now, vibrating the whole cabin. The steering wheel trembled in my hands. Lynn began whispering again, voice rising and falling like a prayer. "It hums when it's near. It hums when it's near." "Lynn, stop," I said. "It's okay. You're safe." She leaned forward against the glass, staring at the road ahead. Her reflection looked strange in the mirror, too still, like the image was lagging behind her movements. We drove for maybe 5 minutes before she spoke again. "It doesn't end, does it?" "What doesn't?" "The road." Her tone wasn't frightened anymore. It was tired, hopeless. Then the headlights flickered once, twice. The dash went black. The car rolled to a stop on its own. Everything went quiet again. I stepped out, flashlight in hand, trying to steady my breathing. The road looked the same in both directions. Endless, empty. The only sound was that low hum, now coming from everywhere at once. When I circled back to the driver's side, Lynn was gone. The door was still locked from the inside. Blanket on the seat. No footprints outside. Just gone. I called out her name, scanning the ditches. My voice bounced off the dark. Then I saw her, 50 feet ahead, standing on a yellow line, facing the opposite direction. I shouted, "Lynn, get back to the car." She didn't move, didn't even turn. I started walking toward her. Every step I took, the hum grew louder. By the time I reached her, it was rattling my teeth. She turned then. Her face looked different, softer, like it wasn't entirely solid. Her eyes were blank, and when she spoke, her voice had an echo that didn't belong to the night. "I thought I left it behind," she said, "but it doesn't let you leave." I didn't answer. I couldn't. She pointed at the pavement between us. The asphalt rippled, just slightly, like heat rising off metal, and then it stilled again. I blinked, and she was gone. No sound, no trace, just the road and the hum fading away into the distance. I searched until dawn, filed a report. They said she must have wandered off while I hallucinated from exhaustion. The official record calls her still missing. But I know better, because 2 nights later, I reviewed my dashcam footage, and for about 6 seconds before the video cuts to black, I saw her reflection in the rear view mirror, sitting in the back seat, staring straight into the lens. Her lips moved once. No sound, but I could read it clear as day. Still walking. After Lynn disappeared, I stopped driving Route 41 for a while. I told the department I was sick. They didn't ask questions. I think they were relieved not to see me for a bit. But even off duty, I couldn't sleep. Every night, when the house went quiet, I swore I could still feel that hum in my chest. It was faint, like a heartbeat buried on the floor. And sometimes I'd wake up in the dark, convinced the mattress was trembling. I'd sit up, hand on my chest, counting the rhythm. And every time it matched, my pulse and the hum, perfectly in sync. I told myself it was in my head. Stress, insomnia, whatever. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. You don't imagine sound you can feel in your bones. A week later, I got the call. A trucker had gone missing. Last seen near, you guessed it, mile 66. I tried not to go, I really did. But when dispatch said they needed someone to check the area before dawn, I was already halfway to my car. Some things you can't ignore, no matter how much you want to. When I reached the stretch of road, the air felt heavier than before, like the whole place was holding its breath. Fog hung low over the asphalt, thick and gray, swallowing the world beyond my headlights. I rolled down the window, and there was again that low, steady hum, soft but alive. I turned off the engine. The sound didn't stop. It kept going, deep under the road, like a giant's pulse buried in concrete. I got out, flashlight in hand, and stepped into the cold. The fog wrapped around me like wet cotton. Even the crickets were silent. It was just me and that sound. I walked the shoulder, scanning for skid marks or broken glass. Anything to prove the trucker had really been here. But there was nothing, not even footprints. Then the hum grew louder. The ground under my boots started to move. Not shake, move. It was subtle at first, like something was shifting far below the surface. I crouched down, pressed my hand to the asphalt. It was warm, not from sunlight. It was almost freezing out. This warmth was pulsing, faint but steady. I whispered to myself, "It's not possible." Then it stopped. Everything did. For a full minute, there was no sound. No hum, no wind, nothing. It was like the whole world had paused. And then the road breathed. The asphalt rose beneath my hand. A long, slow inhale. Cracks spread out like veins. The sound returned, louder than before, but now it had a rhythm, a living one. I stumbled back, flashlight shaking in my grip. The beam caught movement, the blacktop rippling like water, bulging upward, then sinking again. I should have run, but I couldn't. I was rooted there, watching the impossible happen. The road was alive. The hum turned into something deeper, almost like a voice, low and droning. Words I couldn't understand. It wasn't coming from the air. It was coming from underneath. I yelled, maybe to the thing, maybe to myself, "Stop, just stop." It didn't. Instead, a crack split the road in front of me. A clean, perfect line stretching across the asphalt like someone had drawn it with a knife. Then it opened. Inside was black. Not darkness, black. The kind that swallows a light and gives nothing back. The hum became deafening. I covered my ears, but it was still inside me. Every bone in my body felt like it was vibrating. And then I saw something move in the crack. Not an animal. Not even a shape I could name. Just motion. Slow, deliberate, like something shifting closer. I fell backward onto gravel, breathing hard. When I looked up again, the gap was closing. The asphalt folded over itself like a wound healing too fast. In seconds, it was gone. The hum faded. The ground went still, just road again. I sat there for a long time, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. But the flashlight was still rolling where I dropped it, and the battery had melted. I drove back to town without the radio on. Didn't even look at the mirrors. I just wanted out. But the next day, when I walked into the station, the dispatcher looked up and said, "Hey, Sheriff, weird thing. That missing trucker, his rig turned up." "Where?" I asked. "Mile 66. Of course. She showed me a photo on her monitor, a blurry shot from a highway cam. The truck was there at 3:12 a.m., parked on the shoulder. At 3:14, the feed cut to static. When it came back, the road was empty. No truck, no driver. I didn't say a word, just walked out and sat in my cruiser, staring at the wheel. I could feel the hum again, faint under floorboards. That night, I had the dream. I was standing on Route 41, flashlight in hand. The road was breathing again. Only this time, something was rising through it. At first, it looked like tar bubbling up, thick and slow. Then it took shape, arms, a head. But it wasn't human. The features were wrong, stretched, melted, like it had been pressed flat and reformed. Its eyes were just pits of black, shining faintly. And when it opened its mouth, the hum poured out. I woke up gasping, sweat freezing on my skin. The sound was still there, not in my head, in the house, under the floor. I went to the window, looked out at the street. The night was still, moonlight dull on the empty road. but the shadows seemed thicker near the curb, like the pavement was darker than it should be. The next morning, I tore up part of my floorboards in the living room. Nothing underneath, just earth. But when I put my ear to the ground, I could hear it, a faint, steady hum, moving east or west, the same direction as Route 41. It wasn't just a road. It was spreading. I tried to report it, half expecting to be laughed at, but the chief just nodded, pale-faced. "You're not the only one," he said quietly. "We've been getting calls. Vibrations in the ground, lights in the fields. Some folks say the road's sinking in spots." That night, I went back out. I don't know why. Curiosity, guilt, maybe both. I parked by the sign for mile 66 and killed the engine. The air felt thick again, humming softly against my skin. I knelt on the asphalt. It felt warm, almost like a heartbeat, the same rhythm I'd felt in my chest all week. I whispered, "What are you?" The hum answered. It pulsed harder, sharper. The ground began to move again, like muscle beneath skin. Cracks spread outward in all directions, circling me. I tried to stand, but the pavement tilted, breathed, and a wave of heat rose up. The tar split open beneath me. I saw it again, that same black depth, that moving shape below. Only this time, it wasn't staying down there. Something was coming up. It wasn't climbing, it was unfolding. Like the road itself was peeling back layer by layer, turning itself inside out. The hum became a roar. I dropped to my knees, tried to crawl away, but the ground wouldn't let me go. The asphalt had gone soft, sticky, pulling at my hands, and in that roar I heard words, not English, not even sound, really just meaning. It said, "You listened too long, now you belong." Then everything went white. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. I was lying on the shoulder, face against the gravel. The road perfectly still beside me. No cracks, no hum, nothing. My watch said I'd been gone 8 hours. But to me, it felt like seconds. They found my cruiser parked where I'd left it, engine cold. Dash cam footage. 7 minutes of road, then static. But when I played the audio back, just before the static begins, there's a voice, faint, almost hidden under the hum. A woman's voice, whispering. It says, "Still walking." Same words, same tone. Lynn. I turned off the recording. And for the first time, I noticed something else. My heartbeat wasn't steady anymore. It had synced again, with the hum. And when I held my hand to the ground, I realized the truth. The road isn't just under us. It's inside us now. The storm came in quiet. No thunder at first. Just a low wind that carried dust from the open fields and laid it flat against the road. By midnight, the clouds had closed in like a lid, and the sky looked too heavy to hold itself up. I'd been out on patrol for almost 7 hours when the first drops hit the windshield. They slid down in slow lines, lit by the blue strobe of my dash, and I remember thinking how strange it was. Rain never came this far south in October. Not this hard, not this late. I turned on the wipers. Static filled the radio for a second, then cut to silence. I waited for dispatch to check in. They usually called every 30 minutes. Nothing. I said, "Central, this is Unit 41, come in." Only the sound of storm answered back. At first, I thought the signal was weak. Happens sometimes during bad weather. But the longer I drove, the more wrong it felt. The entire county system doesn't just go down. Not all at once. The lights on the dash flickered as I passed the marker for Route 41. The same stretch that had given me trouble a few weeks before. I told myself it was coincidence, but deep down I knew better. This road had a way of calling you back. The wind was howling now. Sheets of rain slamming against the cruiser. The headlights caught nothing but water and gravel, like the world ended 3 feet ahead of me. I grabbed the radio again. "Central, do you copy?" "Over." Still nothing. Just that strange silence, the kind that hums behind your eardrums, like something's waiting to speak. I switched channels, one after another. 8 was dead. 9, a crackle, then faint humming. 10, 11, 12, all gone. When I came back to 9, the hum was still there. Soft, steady, and deep, not like interference, more like breathing. I sat there, parked in the middle of the storm, listening. It almost sounded human. I shut it off. Didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath until my lungs burned. That's when the lightning came, white and violent. It lit up the road long enough for me to see something ahead. A shape. Looked like a person standing on the shoulder, maybe 100 yards away. No umbrella, no coat, just standing there, facing the highway. I flicked on the siren, rolled forward slow. The rain softened for a moment, then enough that I could make out the figure. A man, I thought, tall but still, too still. I pulled over, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out. The air was cold enough to sting. My boots sank into mud along the road, and the beam cut through the rain in a thin silver line. Sheriff's Department. I called out. The man didn't move. I walked closer, my heart starting to pound in that tight, heavy way it does when your instincts tell you something's off. When I was about 10 feet away, the lightning flashed again, just for a second, and the man was gone. Just gone. No footsteps, no tire marks, nothing but rain and mud. I turned in circles, sweeping the light around. Nobody. Then the radio clicked on. Not the normal static. Not a voice. Just a low whisper. Faint but sharp enough to cut through the wind. It said something. I couldn't make out the words, but the sound made my chest tighten. I reached into the cruiser and picked up the receiver. Central? You reading me now? The whisper stopped. Then, after a long pause, another voice, soft female, like someone speaking through cloth. Go back inside. I froze. It wasn't anyone from dispatch. I knew every voice in that room by heart. And this one sounded too close. The storm hit harder. Trees bending, rain slamming sideways across the road. I jumped into the cruiser and slammed the door. Central, identify yourself. Who's transmitting on this frequency? No answer. Just that faint hum again, back on Channel 9. And now, it was syncing with something. My heartbeat. Every pulse in my chest matched the rise and fall of that sound, like it was feeding off it. I shut the radio off again. The hum stopped, but the silence that followed was worse. The kind that makes your ears ring and your thoughts get too loud. I sat there for a while, trying to steady my breathing. Then I noticed something in the rear-view mirror. Light. A single headlight, far down the highway, cutting through the fog. It was moving toward me slow, too slow for a car. I watched it for maybe a minute. Then it went out. Everything went black again. I started the engine. The power flickered. The dash lights dimmed. And for half a second the entire cruiser shuddered, like something heavy had just brushed against it. That was enough for me. I threw into drive and headed back toward town, wheels spitting mud all over the sides. But as I drove, I noticed the storm thinning out behind me and thickening ahead. The lightning was constant now, flashing like camera bulbs. Each flash showed something new on the road. Shapes, small at first, then closer. Objects. I slowed. They were radios. Dozens of old police radios scattered along the shoulder. Some cracked, some still glowing faintly green. Their antennas twitched in the wind. And one by one, as I passed them, they all turned on. The same hum, the same pitch. Perfectly timed with my pulse. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Every radio buzzed louder until the sound filled the entire cabin. And under that hum, I heard voices. Hundreds of them. Muffled, distant, crying for help. Unit 4-1, they whispered. Can you hear us? Stay with us. Stay. I slammed the brakes. When I looked down at my own radio, it was glowing, not green, red. And in that red glow, I could see my reflection in the plastic faceplate. Except it wasn't my face. The eyes were black, the mouth slightly open, whispering words I couldn't hear. The light blinked once, twice, and then went out. The storm ended as suddenly as it started. Just rain now, gentle, steady, normal. The radios were gone. The hum was gone. I drove the rest of the way back to town in silence. When I got to the station, the lights were dark. Power was out across the county. Inside, the backup generator was running, humming faintly in the corner. That same rhythm, that same heartbeat. I walked to the comms desk. Every monitor was dead except one, the one that showed open channels. All of them were offline, except Channel 9. It was lit red, active. I picked up the headset. Didn't say a word. For a moment, there was nothing, just faint static. Then the whisper came back. I told you to go back inside. The voice was calm, almost gentle. And before I could say anything, I heard something else in the background. Rain, footsteps, a door creaking open. My door. I dropped the headset and turned. The sound came again, soft, deliberate steps across the wet tile. But the hallway was empty. I called out, "Who's there?" Nothing. The generator flickered once, then went quiet. The hum faded, and in that silence, I realized something. When the radio died, it didn't just take the signal with it. It took the people. Every officer on duty that night. Gone. No trace. No answers. Just static. And when the system came back online at sunrise, every recorded call from that night was missing. All but one. Mine. It's short. Maybe 3 seconds long. You can barely hear through the static, but if you turn the volume up high enough, you'll catch it. A woman's voice, low and clear. Go back inside. I've listened to it hundreds of times since that night, and every time I hear something new, a faint echo underneath her words. A second voice whispering along with her, and this time it sounded like me. I didn't go back out for 2 nights after the storm. Part of me wanted to believe it was just weather, just coincidence, that what happened with the radio was nothing but static and nerves. But you don't forget silence like that. It doesn't leave your head. The chief asked what I heard out there. I told him the truth, at least part of it. Dispatch went dark. The system flickered, then came back. He nodded and said they'd been running diagnostics since sunrise. Must have been lightning, he said. It hit a repeater tower. But his eyes, they didn't look convinced. That night, the sky was clear again. The air still smelled like wet metal. I was scheduled for another late patrol. Route 41, of course. I tried to swap the shift, but the others were already stretched thin. So I filled a thermos, grabbed my radio, and told myself it would just be another quiet night on the road. At first, hours went by without a single call. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the low crackle of the radio. Normal static this time. I drove past the old grain silos, then the burned-out motel that hadn't seen life in 20 years. Nothing but dust and darkness. But around 2 a.m., the static began to change. It wasn't sudden, more like something slipping in underneath it, like a whisper behind curtain. I turned the volume down. It was still there. A voice. I froze, staring at the receiver. The voice was faint, low, drawn out, like someone speaking from far away through water. Hold on. I swallowed. Central, repeat last. No reply. I checked the channel. Still on 9. The same one that hummed during the storm. The voice came again, closer this time. Unit 41 respond. My fingers went cold. That was my call sign. I lifted the mic slowly. This is Unit 41. Identify yourself. Static swallowed the words, and then soft, sharp, a chuckle. You always say that. I froze. The voice wasn't anyone from dispatch. It was familiar, but not from the radio. I knew it from somewhere else. From years ago. Who is this? I asked again. No answer. Just faint breathing. Then the static warped, bending the signal. And another voice came through. You should have found her sooner, Sheriff. That one hit me in the gut, because I knew exactly what case that came from. June 2009. A missing girl named Amanda Pierce. 17 years old. Last seen leaving a diner just outside of town. We found her 4 days later, down in the quarry. Too late to save her. I hadn't heard her name spoken on the radio since. I turned the dial, switching through every channel. Each one was empty, until I came back to 9. You remember the quarry, don't you? The voice said. You said it felt wrong there. My breath caught. Then another voice layered over it. Deeper, male, the words dragging like they were caught in static. You left before sunset that day. You knew she was still out there. I felt my hands tighten on the wheel. Who is this? I shouted. Silence. Then faintly, "Sheriff, you should have stayed." The sound cut off so fast it left my ears ringing. The radio went back to quiet static. But the quiet wasn't comforting anymore. It felt aware, like something on the other end was listening. I turned off the unit. But the static didn't stop. It was still there, whispering faintly through the speakers even with the power light off. That's when I realized the hum from before was back too. I could feel it under the car, under my hands, sinking again with my heartbeat. I put the cruiser in park, leaned forward, and pressed my ear against the dashboard. The sound wasn't just static anymore. It was words, faint and shifting, like they were buried beneath the metal. For one, "Help me, I can't see." My throat went dry. Those voices, they weren't strangers. They were dispatchers, deputies, victims, all from cases I'd worked over the years. One after another, names I hadn't said out loud in years came through that broken radio. Then I heard my own voice, not recorded, not past, present. It whispered, "Stop listening." The air went cold. I yanked the plug out of the unit, heart racing, but the sound didn't stop. It was still there, faint, deep in the static, crawling across the wires. And underneath all of it, a single phrase repeated over and over, each time a little clearer. "You're not done yet." I didn't realize I was shaking until the coffee spilled out of the cup holder. My hands wouldn't steady. I turned the key, ready to drive back to town. But the headlights flickered once, twice, then dimmed to black. The cruiser engine sputtered, dead. The only light left came from the radio display, glowing a dull red again. I hadn't turned it back on. The frequency numbers were changing on their own. 6.66, 9.13, 4.17. Then it stopped at 41.00. My call sign. And through the static came another whisper. A woman's voice this time, shaky, scared. "Sheriff, please. I can't find the road." I knew that voice. Amanda Pierce. I gripped the mic. "Amanda, where are you?" Silence. Then a breath, broken and soft. "It's dark here. The road keeps moving." My heart stopped. I looked out the windshield. The rain had started again, but light, too even, like it wasn't falling naturally. And then I saw it. Mile marker 66. The one that hadn't existed before the resurfacing project. I'd driven this stretch enough to know where every sign was. This one hadn't been here last week. The hum grew louder. The road seemed to shimmer under the headlights. Wet, alive. The radio hissed. "Sheriff, she's under the road." That voice, male this time, Deputy Harlan. He'd gone missing in 2012, never found. The words echoed through the static until the frequency broke apart. Voices layered, twisting, merging into a wall of whispers, each one calling my name. "Sheriff, help, you left us, you belong here now." It was too much. I slammed the mic down, opened the door, and stepped into the rain. The road was humming beneath my boots, the vibration crawling up through my legs. I could feel the pulse of it, a rhythm that wasn't mine anymore. I walked to the new mile marker, the metal sign rattling in the wind. Someone had carved words into base. Small, rough, like fingernails scratching metal. Still listening. I stumbled back, heart pounding. Behind me, the cruiser engine roared to life. On its own, the headlights flared white, and in that light, I saw something move in the ditch. A figure, drenched, crawling up from the mud. Her hair was matted, her clothes torn, her skin gray from the cold. Amanda. She lifted her head and looked right at me, but her mouth didn't move. Her voice came through the radio. "Why didn't you answer sooner?" I froze. Her eyes flickered, not reflection, not light. Something inside them glowing faint red, pulsing in rhythm with the radio hum. Then she stood, slow, deliberate. The mud around her feet was moving too, rippling outward like water disturbed from below. The headlights flickered. The radio screamed with feedback. And for a split second, I heard every voice at once. Hundreds layered into one awful sound, filling my head, pressing against my skull until I thought it would split. Then silence. When I opened my eyes, the figure was gone. The rain had stopped. The road was dry. The cruiser sat dark and cold. The radio screen blank. I checked my watch. It was 3:12 a.m., exactly the same time the trucker disappeared last week. I drove back to town in silence. Didn't look in the mirrors. Didn't turn the radio on. But as I pulled into the station lot, the hum came again. Soft, patient, waiting. The display flickered to life, just long enough to show one line of text across the screen. Case reopened. I turned the key, pulled it out, and sat there staring at that black, dead radio. The storm hadn't taken the signal down that night. Something else had taken it over, and now it knew my name. It's strange how quiet the world gets after midnight. Out there on the back roads, it's like time holds its breath. Even the trees stop moving, and you start to feel like the only living thing for miles. That's where I was again, Route 41. Same road, same hum under the tires, same uneasy silence that made my skin crawl. After what happened with the voices, I told myself I wouldn't turn the radio back on. But quiet isn't always peace. Sometimes silence feels heavier than noise. So I did. I turned it back on. The static came alive instantly, like it had been waiting for me. For a long time, it was just white noise. Then, soft, I heard a voice cut through. Unit 41, do you copy? It was clear. Too clear. I gripped the mic. This is 41. Go ahead. Static. Then again, 41, confirm. This is call sign 19. The name froze me. Call sign 19. That used to belong to Deputy Mark Holloway. But Holloway was dead. He died 6 months ago. Car accident out on the Ridge Road. The same Ridge Road I was heading toward now. I stared at the mic. Every hair on my arms stood up. I wanted to answer, but my throat wouldn't work. I just listened. The voice came through again, steady, calm, like it always was when Holloway spoke on shift. 41, status check. Where are you right now? My hand moved on its own. I'm on 41, near mile marker 62. Who is this? He chuckled. That same small laugh he used to do when he thought I was being too serious. You sound tired, Sheriff. Long night. I felt a tightness in my chest. I hadn't heard that voice since his funeral. You're not real, I said, almost whispering. Neither are the roads, he said back. Then silence. The hum started again under the cruiser, faint like before, and with it, the sound of faint tapping from somewhere inside the car. Tick, tick, tick. It wasn't the engine. It wasn't the wipers. It was coming from the glove box. I reached over and opened it slowly. Inside was my backup radio, the one Holloway used on our last joint patrol. The speaker crackled to life on its own. For one, his voice said again, you shouldn't be out here. I stared at the radio like it was breathing. Mark, I whispered, if this is some kind of recording, it's not. The reply came sharp, immediate, too human to be playback. Then I heard something else, faint behind his voice. Wind, movement, and another voice, far away, calling for help. It sounded like me. I can't see the road, the distant voice said. There's something in it. The hum under the cruiser grew stronger, like the pavement itself was alive. And for a second, the headlights flickered, revealing cracks in the asphalt that hadn't been there a moment ago. Mark, I said, where are you? He didn't answer right away. Then, same place you're going. The road doesn't end out here anymore, Sheriff. It loops. What are you talking about? You'll see soon enough. The transmission cut to static, but the sound didn't fade. It changed. Now it was like someone breathing, slow and ragged, through the speaker. I pressed the mic again. Mark, talk to me. Still think I'm gone, he said softly. Look left. I turned my head. The beam of my headlight hit something standing at the tree line. A figure, half in shadow. Uniform. Hat. A man. He lifted a hand. Slow, deliberate, and waved once. I blinked, and he was gone. The radio hissed, then crackled again. You saw me, he said. That's good. Means you're getting closer. Closer to what? To the part that remembers. I don't know why, but that line broke something in me. I slammed the mic down, switched the radio off, and floored the gas. The cruiser roared forward, tires spitting gravel. But no matter how fast I drove, the same mile marker kept passing by. 62. Over and over. The same crooked post. The same dent in the guardrail. It didn't make sense. I slowed down, heart pounding. Then the radio, still off, lit up again. "Don't fight it," Holloway's voice whispered. "We all drive the loop eventually." The hum under the tires shifted. It wasn't just vibration now. It was rhythm, almost like breathing. And then, like before, the sound began syncing with my heartbeat. I gripped the wheel tighter. The air felt thick, heavy, and through that dense silence, I heard another voice, faint, almost childlike. "She's still out there, Sheriff." Amanda's voice. I slammed on the brakes. The cruiser skidded sideways, stopping right at the edge of the ditch. The headlights caught movement in the dark, a flash of pale fabric, a face half covered in dirt, then gone. My breathing came fast and uneven. The radio came back again, Holloway's tone now slower, heavier. "Do you remember what you said to me that night?" I didn't answer. "You said sometimes the radio talks back. I laughed at you." He paused. "I'm not laughing now." The static deepened, like the signal was sinking underwater. "I didn't crash, Sheriff," he said quietly. I followed the voice, just like you. Then I heard something else behind him, a low groan like metal bending, and over that sound a whisper that wasn't his. "You're next." The channel died. The cruiser lights flickered again. For a second, I thought I saw something moving under the asphalt, the surface shifting like muscle under skin. I pressed the accelerator, trying to get back to town, but the road wouldn't change. It kept looping, no matter how far I drove. Every landmark came back, the crooked sign, the same stretcher fence, the same dead oak leaning over the ditch. Then, finally, the radio turned itself back on. 4-1, do you copy? I didn't touch it. 4-1, respond. Status report. The voice sounded different this time, more official, almost normal. "This is Central Dispatch," it said. I took the mic, shaking. "Central, this is 4-1. I've got interference on Channel 9. Someone's using call sign 19. There was a pause. "Repeat that, 4-1. "Call sign 19. I said again, "Mark Holloway. He's transmitting." Another pause, longer this time. Then, 4-1, you must be mistaken." "I'm not. He called me. He knew things only he would know." The voice on dispatch went cold. "Sheriff, call sign 19 was decommissioned 6 months ago. Deputy Holloway died in that crash. You know that." I closed my eyes. I know what I heard. Static, then returned to base immediately. But as they spoke, another voice slipped underneath. Holloway's again, whispering through the same frequency. "Don't go back. They'll make you forget." The two voices overlapped. Dispatch and Holloway, one calm, one desperate. I didn't know who to trust. "Sheriff," Dispatch said again, firm now, "turn around." "Don't," Holloway hissed. "The road wants you to." I looked at the dashboard. The frequency had changed on its own. Now it read 19.41 megahertz. His number and mine together. The hum built to a low roar. My pulse pounded in my ears until the two rhythms merged, the road and me, one sound. Then I heard him again. "Remember what we buried," he whispered. "That's where it starts." The radio cut to silence, and out there, in that thick black night, I saw something glint in the ditch, metal, half buried in the dirt. I stepped out, boots sinking into wet soil. It was a badge, worn, bent. The numbers on it read 19. When I looked back up, the cruiser headlights flickered once more, and for a split second, I saw Holloway standing behind the wheel, his face pale, eyes hollow, mouth moving without sound. Then gone. I picked up the badge and walked back to the car, my hands trembling. When I climbed in, the radio was dead again. No light, no sound, just silence. But as I turned the key, a faint whisper rose from the static, one final line. Quiet and close, like someone sitting in the passenger seat. "See you on the loop, Sheriff. I've seen strange things on these roads, shapes in the fog, lights that don't belong to any car, and shadows that move when nothing else does. But that night, What I saw wasn't strange. It was impossible. It started just after 2 in the morning. The air was heavy with mist, and the world had that silver gray look that only comes right before dawn. I was heading back toward town, trying to shake the feeling that the road itself was watching me. The radio was dead again, no static, no hum, nothing but the sound of tires on wet asphalt. I'd been driving for what felt like an hour when I noticed headlights behind me, 2 bright beams low to the ground, following at a steady distance. Out here, that was rare. No one drives this road after midnight unless they have to. I slowed a little, expecting the car to pass. It didn't. The light stayed in my mirror, hovering there like eyes. After another few minutes, I turned off to the shoulder near mile marker 66. The other vehicle kept coming, slow and deliberate. When it finally drew close enough, I leaned forward and squinted through the windshield. That's when I saw it. It was my cruiser. Same model, same markings, same dent in the front bumper I'd been meaning to fix. Even the cracked left headlight. It was all identical, but someone else was driving it. At first I thought maybe it was another unit, but the number on the side was mine, 41. And through the foggy glass, I saw a shape in the driver's seat. A man in uniform, hat on, sitting tall, hands on the wheel. He didn't look my way, didn't slow down, just drove right past. Headlights washing over me as if I wasn't even there. I watched until the taillights vanished into the fog. Then I sat there, heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. I got out my cruiser and looked around, half expecting it to reappear somewhere behind me. The air was still. Not even the crickets were chirping. Just silence, thick and wrong. I checked my plate, my number, my badge. Everything was real, solid, here. So what the hell had I just seen? I got back in, started the engine, and pulled onto the road again. For a few miles, nothing happened. But the further I drove, the more I started to notice small things out of place. Signs pointing the wrong way. The same mile marker repeating again. The smell of wet tar in the air like the road had just been poured. Then I saw them again, the taillights. Up ahead, same car, same slow, steady motion. I pressed the gas, try and catch up, but the harder I pushed, the farther away it seemed to get. It was like chasing a reflection. I could see it. I just couldn't reach it. Finally, at a curve near the ridge, it stopped, parked right in the middle of the road. My cruiser, engine idling. I slowed down and pulled over a few yards behind it. For a long moment, neither of us moved. 2 identical cars, facing the same direction, engines humming in sync. Then the driver door opened. Someone stepped out. Uniform, hat, even the badge caught the light in the same way mine did. He stood in the road, staring straight ahead, not at me, but down the black stretch of highway that vanished into fog. And then, as if he heard something I couldn't, he turned his head just enough for me to see his face. It was mine, not a trick of light, not some tired hallucination. It was me. Same eyes, same scar under the chin, same everything. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to speak, but no sound came out. He didn't move closer, didn't say a word, just looked at me for a moment, then back toward the fog, as if something that was calling to him. A low rumble rolled to the ground, and I realized the hum was back. It was faint at first, like a memory of sound, then stronger, vibrating through the wheel, through my seat, through my bones. The other me turned, got back into his cruiser, and started to drive again. Only this time, he turned off the main road, right onto the dirt trail that leads into the old quarry. No one uses that trail anymore, not since the cave-in 2 years ago. I hesitated for a long time. Every instinct in me said to go back. But curiosity, or maybe guilt, made me follow. The fog thickened until it looked like smoke. My headlights barely cut through it. The trees pressed close on both sides, their branches scraping against the roof like fingers. And up ahead, that same pair of red taillights glowed faintly through the haze. He stopped again, just short of quarry edge. His brake lights painted the rocks in blood-red color. I pulled up behind him and killed my engine. The air was electric. I could feel it on my skin, humming through every nerve. Then I saw him step out once more, walk to the edge, and stand there, looking down into the black pit below. His radio crackled. Mine did too, and through the static, I heard both of our voices at once. 4-1, do you copy? The sound overlapped, doubled, until I couldn't tell which of us was speaking. Then a third voice joined in, familiar, quiet, low. Holloway. See, he whispered. It loops. The other me turned his head slowly, like he heard it too. Then he looked back at me and smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was tired, like someone who already knew the ending. He raised his hand and pointed at me. Then, without hesitation, he walked forward, straight off the edge of the quarry. No sound, no scream, just gone. I rushed out of my cruiser and ran to the edge. Below, there was nothing but fog. No body, no car, no sign he'd ever been there. When I looked back toward the road, the space where my cruiser had been was empty. I froze. My heart felt like it stopped beating. I turned in a slow circle, and that's when I saw it again. Headlights coming down the hill. A single vehicle moving toward me. I waved my flashlight. When the beams hit me, I saw the markings. Sheriff's Department, Unit 4-1. It was my car, coming toward me. Again, I stumbled back. The engine noise grew louder. I could see the outline of the driver through the glass. Same uniform, same hat, same face. I backed away into the trees as the cruiser passed. The driver staring straight ahead, eyes locked on the road. He didn't see me, didn't stop, just kept going. When I finally stepped out, the fog swallowed him. But the echo of the engine stayed for a long time after. I don't know how long I stood there before walking back to where I parked. Only my car wasn't there anymore. Just two faint tire tracks in the mud, leading toward the quarry and ending at the edge. I checked my pocket. The keys were gone. All that was left was the smell of hot rubber and the faint, rhythmic hum beneath the ground. When I bent down, I could feel it pulsing, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. Maybe mine, maybe the road's. I can't tell anymore. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see those taillights. Still hear the hum building until it fills my head. And sometimes when I drive that stretch again, I see my own cruiser pass by. Every time, the same way. Same dent, same crack in the glass, same man behind the wheel. Only now, when he looks at me, he doesn't smile, he just keeps driving. And for a moment, I can't tell if I'm the one behind the wheel or the one watching him disappear. I don't sleep much anymore, not after what I heard on that tape. It's funny, I used to think the scariest part of being sheriff was walking into a house not knowing who was waiting inside. But that night, sitting alone in my patrol car with the radio hissing like a living thing, I realized there are worse ways to feel trapped. The storm had passed 2 nights earlier, but the air was still thick. Every sound outside was damp. The crickets, the wind, the drip from the old station sign. I had the cruiser parked behind the substation, engine off, recorder rolling. I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind, because every time I turned on the radio lately, something was speaking back. It wasn't static anymore. Not exactly. It moved, like breath pressed through wires. Sometimes it said my name. Sometimes it laughed in short bursts, like a broken machine remembering how. I'd been keeping notes, timestamps, frequencies. I told myself it was just interference, old recordings bouncing off the mountains. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. That night, I tuned the dial to Channel 9 again. My hand trembled without me meaning to. At first, just a familiar hum, a low pulse that seemed to match my heartbeat. Then, slowly, a voice pushed through. Call sign 19, respond. My chest tightened. That was Ray's call sign. Deputy Raymond Hill, dead 3 months now. You copy, Sheriff? I froze. The voice wasn't recording. I could hear breathing, faint movement, even the way the radio mic brushed against fabric. It sounded live. I whispered into the recorder. Date, March 12th, time, 2:43 a.m., Channel 9. Possible interference mimicking deceased deputy. My voice shook. It didn't sound like me. The radio crackled again. Sheriff, roads are clear. Mile marker 66 looks good. That was the last location Ray had ever called out before he went missing. His cruiser was found the next day, doors open, Headlights still on, no sign of him. "You shouldn't be out here," I said quietly into the mic. For a moment, silence. Then, "Neither should you." I swear I felt the temperature drop. I killed the radio, just slammed the dial off, and sat there breathing like I'd run a mile. My heart hammered in my ears. But even with the power off, the speaker clicked. Once, twice, then whispered, "Play it back." I didn't wait around. I drove straight back to the substation. Lights off, windows down to keep from suffocating. Every few seconds, I checked the rear view mirror. My own reflection looked wrong, like my eyes were still catching up to the rest of me. Back inside, I transferred the recording onto tape. I expected nothing. Maybe static, maybe faint words. But what came through wasn't what I remembered hearing. The playback started normal enough, my breathing, the hum, the voice saying, "Call sign 19. But after that, it changed. There was another voice layered underneath Ray's. Deeper, slower, like it was trying to speak through him. "He's not done yet." The line repeated 3 times, each time warping lower, until it didn't even sound human. The 3rd time, I heard something else. Faint footsteps, went close to the mic, then the sound of a door opening. I rewound the tape, thinking maybe it had caught an echo from somewhere else. But the substation was sealed. I was the only one there. I tried playing again, this time through the main speakers. That's when the lights flickered. The whole building went dead silent. Even the clock on the wall stopped ticking. Then from a radio on my desk, without power, a voice whispered, "You're recording now." The mic light blinked red. I stepped back, nearly tripped over a chair. I yanked the power cord out of the wall, but the light stayed on. I could still hear breathing from the speaker. Slow, measured, like it was waiting for me to say something. Finally, I whispered, "What do you want?" There was a pause. Then, "To finish what you started." The words stretched, bending like they were underwater. And behind them, faint but clear, came the sound of sirens. Not any I recognized. They were distant at first, then closer, overlapping, like every siren I'd ever heard was screaming all at once. I dropped the recorder. It hit the floor, and the sound cut out. When the lights came back, everything was still. The red mic light was off. The radio was silent, but the tape, the physical tape in the recorder, was still moving, spinning, even though the machine wasn't powered. I reached down, hand shaking, and stopped it manually. I didn't rewind it, didn't dare. I took that tape, sealed it in an evidence bag, and drove it out to the old storage lot behind the impound shed, locked in the trunk of a seized car. For a few days, nothing happened. No voices, no humming, just the usual dispatch calls and the quiet of empty roads. I almost convinced myself it had ended there. Then one night, last week, the new deputy, Sam, called me over, said he found something strange in the back lot. When I got there, he was standing by the same seized car. The trunk was open. The evidence bag was gone, but the tape deck was running. He said he didn't touch it, just heard the sound and went to check. The tape was playing my own voice from that night, only it didn't stop where I remembered. After I'd asked, "What do you want?" there was more. Another voice, faint but clear, said, "We already have it." Then silence. Sam looked at me, confused. He said, "What's this from, Sheriff?" I told him not to worry about it. Told him it was probably a corrupted file. But he looked at me strange, like he didn't believe it. That was 3 days ago. This morning, I came into the station early. Sam wasn't there. His cruiser was gone. I tried calling his radio. Nothing. Just dead air. Then, at exactly 6:12 a.m., my radio turned on by itself. Call sign 19 to dispatch. It was Ray's voice again. But this time, it wasn't just him. Sam's voice answered. "Copy that. I've got the sheriff with me." The sound of an engine. Wind. We're heading toward mile marker 66. The same place. The same words. And beneath it all, faint, rising, was that hum again. That pulse. Syncing perfectly with my heartbeat. I tried shutting the radio off, pulling the fuse, even disconnecting the battery. But no matter what I did, the sound stayed. Like it wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was in the walls, the floor, inside me. I can still hear it now. That's why I'm recording this, my last transmission. Not for the department, not for the county. For whoever finds this tape. If you're listening, you'll hear it too, eventually. The hum, the voices, the names. It'll start small, just a flicker in the static, a whisper through the wires. Then it'll grow, like a heartbeat beneath the world. When it does, don't answer it. Don't record it. Don't even speak to it. Because once it knows your voice, it won't stop calling. It started like any other call. A simple complaint. Strange noises out on Hollow Road. That stretch of road barely gets traffic anymore. It winds through empty farmland and ends at the old water tower that hasn't been used since the 70s. Every deputy who's done night patrol out there has a story about it. The sound of chains in the dark. Figures walking where no light should be. I didn't believe any of it. Until that night. Dispatch said a woman had called around 9 p.m. said she heard banging from the old farmhouse near the tower. The one the county records marked abandoned since 1984. She didn't give her name. Just said, something's moving out there. I was already heading that way for routine patrol. So I took the call. I remember the rain starting right as I turned onto Hollow Road. Not heavy yet, just enough to make the wipers whisper back and forth. The road was darker than usual. The tower light had burned out years ago, and the trees had grown close enough to swallow the moonlight. As I drove, I kept thinking about that woman's voice. The way she said something, not someone. I pulled over near the gate that led up to the farmhouse. The place sat maybe 100 yards off the road, half hidden by tall grass and a leaning mailbox with no number. I radioed dispatch. This is Unit 7. I'm at Hollow Road near the tower. Going to check the property. No answer. Just static. That wasn't too unusual. The tower area always had bad reception, but it was enough to make my stomach tighten a bit. I left the car running, headlights on low, and stepped out. The air smelled like wet dirt and old wood. My boots sank into the mud as I started up the gravel path. Even from a distance, I could tell the house was in bad shape. The porch leaned like it was tired of holding itself up. One shutter banged softly against the wall with each gust of wind. The closer I got, the more it felt wrong, not dangerous, just off, like the world around it had gone still. No wind, no insects, just a faint crackle of rain on the metal roof. I called out, Sheriff's Department. My voice came back dull, swallowed by the fog. No one answered. I stepped onto the porch. The boards groaned under my weight, and for a moment, I thought I heard footsteps moving somewhere inside. Slow, deliberate. I called out again. Hello? Anyone in there? Silence. The front door was half open, tilted off one hinge. When I pushed it, the wood gave way with a long, tired sigh. The smell hit me first. Dampness, rot, and something else underneath like iron and mold. The kind of smell you only notice in places where time has stopped paying attention. My flashlight cut through the dust and revealed old furniture draped in sheets. Wallpaper peeled down like dead skin. A staircase led up to the second floor, the banister broken halfway up. I kept the light steady and stepped inside. The floorboards flexed under my boots. Each sound echoed too long, like the house was listening. In the corner of the living room, I saw an old radio sitting on a crate. That's what the complaint must have been. I thought, maybe the wind knocked it on somehow, making noise through the static. I walked over, brushed some cobwebs off the dial. It was one of those big wooden models from the 50s, the kind my grandfather used to have. It wasn't plugged in. Still, I could hear something faint coming from it, a low hum. It almost sounded like breathing. I leaned closer. That's when it whispered my name. I stumbled back, nearly dropped the flashlight. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it, that the storm was messing with my head. But then it said it again, soft and dragging, like the air itself had learned to speak. Sheriff, it was my voice. Not similar, exactly mine. I stepped back until I hit the doorway, my hand reaching for my gun, even though I didn't know what I'd shoot at. The hum deepened. The whole room seemed to vibrate, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat trapped inside the walls. Then, all at once, the radio went dead, The silence that followed was heavier than sound. I could hear my pulse in my ears, loud and uneven. I don't remember deciding to leave, but suddenly I was back on the porch, rain hitting my face. I took one last look through the doorway. The light from my cruiser headlights barely reached the edge of the room, but I could swear I saw something standing near the radio. Tall, still, just a shadow. It wasn't there when I blinked. I got back in the car and tried a radio dispatch again. Unit 7 to base. You copy. Static. Then a faint voice broke through. We hear you, Sheriff. Stay at the scene. I frowned. The voice was flat, mechanical, like it had been run through a bad speaker. Say again? I asked. No response. Just static. I glanced up toward the house. Every window was dark except one. The upstairs left. Something moved behind the curtain. It was slow, almost careful. A pale shape, maybe a hand, maybe a face. I couldn't tell through the fog. That was enough for me. I put the car in gear and backed out onto the road. But as I turned the wheel, my headlights hit the side of the house, and there were footprints in the mud. Not mine, barefoot, leading away from the porch. They went down the slope toward the water tower. For a long minute, I just sat there, the engine idling, rain pattering on the windshield. I knew I should call for backup, wait for daylight, get a team, but I couldn't leave it. Something in me, maybe pride, maybe fear, made me step back out and follow those prints. The mud squelched underfoot. My flashlight beam bounced weakly through the fog. The prints were fresh. I could see water filling them as I walked. They led straight to the tower. When I reached it, I noticed the ladder was wet, not from rain, but something darker. The first rung I touched left a smear of rust-colored streaks across my glove. That's when I heard it again, the radio, from back inside the cruiser. It was blaring now, full of static and half-words, like multiple channels playing at once. Then, through the noise, I heard my voice. We hear you, Sheriff. Stay at the scene. The exact words from before. Only now, there was another voice beneath it, quieter. He's already here. I turned back toward the car. Through the rain and the distance, I could see something in the driver's seat, a shape leaning forward, hands on the wheel. I froze. The headlights flickered once, then twice, and when they came back on, the seat was empty again. By the time I got back to the station, dawn was breaking. I told dispatch the call was unfounded, probably an old radio picking up interference. They logged it and moved on, but I didn't, because later that morning, I went to check the call log. There was no record of any complaint from Hollow Road, no timestamp, no caller, nothing. And when I went back that evening to double-check the property, the house wasn't there. Just a field of wet grass and a broken fence facing the water tower. But if you drive down that road at night, on a rainy night, roll your windows down. You'll hear it too, that low hum, that whisper, the sound of someone breathing your name through the static. And if you follow it long enough, it'll lead you home. I went back to Hollow Road the next night. I told myself it was for closure, to double-check, to prove what I'd seen wasn't real. But that wasn't the truth. The truth is, I couldn't stop hearing that voice, the one that came through the radio. My own voice, saying words I didn't remember saying. Sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that same hum from the farmhouse, low and steady, like it had taken root somewhere deep in my chest. By evening, I made up my mind. I'd go back alone. I didn't file a report, didn't tell dispatch. I didn't want the guys at the station thinking I'd lost it. The sky was clear this time. No rain, no fog, just cold air that bit through my jacket. When I reached the gate, I stopped short. The house was there again, perfectly intact. Every board, every window, like it had never vanished. I stood there for a long time, staring through the dark. The roof reflected the moonlight. The porch looked newer somehow, straighter. I remember whispering, "No way." But I knew what I was seeing. I walked up the path, keeping my hand on the holster. The grass was dry now, and the air smelled faintly of smoke. At the porch, I paused and looked at the door. It was closed this time. The same warped wood, same crooked hinges. When I pushed it open, the hinges let out that same long sigh. The smell hit me again, damp rot, and something sharp beneath it, like copper. But this time there was another layer, something warm. Lived in. My flashlight swept across the living room. Someone had cleaned. The sheets were gone from the furniture. The dust was lighter, disturbed. On the table sat a cup half full of water, and in the corner, near the cold fireplace, a pair of muddy boots. I froze. There hadn't been any footprints when I left. Whoever was here had come after. I should have radioed in right there, called for backup. But all I could think about was that hum from before, that whisper that had used my name. I needed to know if it was still here. The floor creaked beneath me as I moved toward the back of the house. The kitchen smelled faintly of kerosene. A single lantern sat on the counter, unlit. Then I saw it, a trapdoor in the floor, almost hidden under a faded rug. The edges of the rug were curled, and the wood beneath looked newer, replaced maybe a year or two ago. I crouched and ran my fingers along the boards. The wood was cold, colder than the air around me. That's when I heard it, soft, muffled, crying. At first, I thought it was wind whistling through a vent. But then it came again, broken sobs, low and trembling, like someone was trying not to be heard. It was coming from beneath the floor. I whispered, "Hello?" The crying stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear my own breathing bouncing back at me from the walls. I should have left. I know that now. But in that moment, every instinct I had as a cop kicked in. Someone was down there. I pulled the rug aside. The trapdoor had a metal ring latch. It looked clean, used recently. I grabbed it and pulled. The hinges groaned, and a gust of air came up from the dark, thick and heavy, smelling like wet dirt and rust. My flashlight beam disappeared into it. Swallowed whole. Sheriff's Department. I called down. "If you can hear me, I'm here to help." Something moved below. Not footsteps, more like dragging. I aimed the light down. The stairs were steep, may of old would have disappeared into the black. The crying started again, faint but close. "Please." A woman's voice this time. Weak. "I'm coming down," I said, though my throat felt tight. Each step creaked as I descended. The air grew colder, thicker. I could taste metal on my tongue. At the bottom, my boots touched packed earth. The light caught the edge of something metallic. A small cot pushed against the wall. On it was a blanket and a tin cup. Someone had been living here. There were marks on the dirt wall, tallies scratched in uneven rows. I counted 27 before they disappeared into the darkness. Then, just as I took another step, my beam landed on the corner. A shape, a person, kneeling, facing the wall. "Ma'am," I said quietly. "You called for help?" No response. The shoulders trembled slightly. I took a cautious step forward. My light trembled across her back, bare skin, ribs showing through, hair tangled, and wet like she crawled out of a river. "Ma'am," I said again. She turned. Her face was pale, eyes wide open but unfocused. Dirt streaked down her cheeks, and around her wrists, rope burns. "Who did this to you?" I asked. She blinked slowly. Her mouth moved, but the words came out in a rasp. "He's still here." I felt the air shift. Not from her, from behind me. The sound was subtle, a shuffle of feet on soil. I turned fast, sweeping the light across the room. No one. The walls were rough, the ceiling low. Only one way in or out. I turned back, and she was gone. The cot was empty. My flashlight flickered, catching a glimpse of something on the wall where she'd been. Fresh mud smeared in streaks, the outline of two hands. And below it, carved deep into the dirt. "Stay below." I backed toward the stairs, my heart hammering. The air felt heavier now, pressing against my chest. I started climbing fast. Halfway up, the crying started again. But this time it was behind me, low, muffled, right against my ear. "Don't leave me again." I swung the light down. The bottom of the stairs was empty. Then bang, the trapdoor slammed shut above me. I dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled across the dirt, flashing over shapes in the dark. Bones, small ones, maybe animal, maybe not. The crying stopped. A whisper replaced it. "Sheriff." That same voice. My voice. The air filled with that humming again, low, rhythmic, pulsing through the walls. It vibrated the boards under my hands. I forced myself up the last few steps and shoved at the trapdoor. It didn't move. I pushed harder, shoulder into the wood, until finally it gave way. I stumbled out, gasping, slamming it shut behind me. The hum stopped. The house went quiet again. I didn't remember leaving. 1 second I was standing there, staring at that trapdoor, and the next I was in my cruiser, headlights cutting through the empty field. When I looked back in the mirror, the house looked wrong again, tilted like it was sinking. I drove until I hit the main road, until the signal bars came back on my radio. I tried to call it in, but every time I pressed a mic, all I got was static. So I drove straight to the station. When I walked in, Deputy Harris looked up from his desk. "You look like hell," he said. "Someone's squatting out the hollow place." I told him, "It might be dangerous. We need a team." He frowned. "What place?" I stared at him. "The old farmhouse near the water tower." He shook his head slowly. "Sheriff, that house burned down in '97. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "I was just there, Harris. The damn thing's standing. Someone's been living underneath it." He didn't argue, just gave me a long, worried look. He pulled up the property file on his computer. The image that popped up was nothing but an empty lot, a blackened patch of land. "No structure, no foundation," he said softly. "It's been gone a long time." That's when I noticed something, a sound leaking faintly from a radio on the corner of his desk. Static, then underneath it, crying, soft, muffled, coming from below. I told him to turn it off, but he just stared at me. "What crying?" he asked. The static grew louder, and over it, I heard the same voice from last night. Mine. "He's still here." The sound faded. The radio went dead. No one else in the room reacted. They didn't hear it. Only me. That night, when I got home, I checked my boots. Mud. Fine, dark mud. The kind from the basement floor. I wiped them clean, but I couldn't get rid of the smell. It's still there, faint and metallic. And sometimes when the night's quiet enough, I hear the floorboards under my bed creak. Slow, careful, like someone's crawling beneath them. I used to tell people that Hollow Road was quiet after midnight, peaceful even, but that night it didn't feel like peace. It felt like something holding its breath. I was still parked near that old water tower when the air went strange again, heavy electric, like before a lightning strike. The farmhouse behind me looked darker than ever. Even though I'd left the front door open, every sound, the chirp of a cricket, the sway of grass, seemed swallowed up by something thicker than silence. I got back into my cruiser to call for backup. The radio light flickered, weak, like it didn't want to come alive. "Dispatch! This is Sheriff Collins. I need a unit at Hollow Road near the old tower," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Possible trespassing, maybe more. Over." But there was no static this time. No hiss, no voice. Just a low hum. Faint, deep, like the sound of power lines vibrating in fog. It made my teeth ache. Then, for a split second, the radio light flared, and a voice whispered back. "Stay there." Not the dispatcher. Not anyone I knew. It was wet, thick, like someone trying to speak through water. I froze. "Who is this?" I asked. "Identify yourself." Nothing. Only that hum again, rising slowly, as if it was crawling through the wires. I got out of the cruiser. The air felt colder now. The grass around the tower was wet, though it hadn't rained. When I turned my flashlight toward the tank, I noticed the ground had become soft. The kind of soft you get when the soil's been disturbed recently. That's when I saw it. The water tank. That big, rusted dome that hadn't held real water in 20 years was leaking. Just a slow, steady trickle down the side. But the water wasn't clear. It was dark like oil. I thought maybe the storm had cracked the thing. Maybe it was draining after years of sitting still. But then I saw movement. Just a faint ripple beneath the film of darkness. Someone was in there. I climbed up halfway, careful not to slip on the rusted ladder. When my flashlight hit the surface again, I saw fingers. Just fingers. 5 of them, pale and still, reaching out to the water near the rim, like they were pressing against the inside. I almost dropped the light. "Hello," I called. "Is anyone?" The fingers slipped beneath the surface. Gone. That's when I noticed the hum again, louder now. It wasn't from the cruiser. It was coming from the tower, deep inside the metal, vibrating through it like a heartbeat. I called out again, but no answer came, only the sound of the wind brushing through the trees. I went back to my cruiser and switched on the floodlights, angling them toward the tank. The beams cut through the dark, and for the first time, I saw just how much water had gathered around it. It wasn't just a puddle anymore. It was a pool, stretching out in a wide ring. The hum deepened, and the water began to stir, not from wind, from underneath, and then faces. Dozens of them. They floated just beneath the surface, white and still, not bloated, not rotting, just pale like masks. Men, women, children. Eyes open, mouths closed, all looking up toward the floodlights. My chest locked. My knees went weak. I backed away, stumbling over the gravel. They weren't reflections. They weren't tricks of light. I could see them too clearly. The way the shadows cut over their noses, the way the light glinted off the wet skin. And then, as I stood there shaking, every single face turned toward me. Not fast, not like in movies, just slow, deliberate. I reached for my gun, but couldn't remember pulling it from the holster. My hands were shaking too much. I wanted to run, to turn off the lights, to do anything but stand there, but I couldn't move. They were all watching me. Then I heard something, beneath the hum, faint, layered voices whispering, too many at once. I couldn't make out the words, only that they were saying them together like a chant. The water rippled outward, gentle but constant. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, one of the faces rose up. A woman, or what looked like one, emerged slowly from the water, her head breaking the surface without a single splash. Her hair hung in long black strands. Her eyes were open, but they didn't blink. Her lips parted, and I swear I saw the same thick, dark water pour from her mouth as she whispered, "Sheriff Collins." I nearly dropped my flashlight. She knew my name. I backed toward the cruiser, my boots sinking into the mud. "Who are you?" I shouted, though my voice cracked halfway through. She didn't answer. She just tilted her head, the same way I'd seen bodies tilt when they were hanging. Then another face surfaced beside her. Then another, and another. The whispers grew louder, pressing into my skull, repeating my name like a prayer. "Collins, Collins, Collins." The floodlights flickered. Once, twice, and then, in the space of one breath, they all disappeared. The water went still. The hum stopped. Silence. I stood there shaking, breathing so hard it hurt. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. My radio hissed softly again, like it was waking up from a dream. "Collins, you copy?" This time, it sounded like dispatch. Real. Human. I almost laughed from relief. Yeah, I'm here," I said, voice trembling. "You need to send backup now." Hollow road, near the old tower. Something's static. Then a second voice, not dispatch. "Not anyone alive. Behind you." I spun around. Nothing. Just the tank. The tower. The floodlights blinking weakly through the fog. But the water wasn't calm anymore. It was bubbling. I saw something rising inside it. Something that moved with weight. Not human. Not shaped right. I didn't stay to see the rest. I jumped into the cruiser, slammed the door, and floored it down the road, gravel spraying behind me. I didn't look back, not even when the lights in the mirror began flickering like someone waving a flashlight in slow motion. I kept driving until the hum faded, until the radio stopped whispering, until I saw the first real light of town again. When I finally stopped, I sat in the car for a long time, just staring at the steering wheel. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My breath came in small, broken gasps. I tried to tell myself I imagined it, that it was the storm, the fog, the stress, anything but what I actually saw. But when I got out and walked around the cruiser, there was water on the doors, thick black water, and one single wet handprint on the back window. Small, pale, like someone pressed it there gently before letting go. I wiped it off, got back in, tried to convince myself I dreamed it. But every night since, when I close my eyes, I still see those faces beneath the floodlights. And sometimes when the wind is low and the power lines I'm outside my house, I hear them whispering my name again. Sheriff Collins. Like they're waiting. Like the water never stopped moving. You can tell a lot about a man by the way he drives at night. Some keep one hand on the wheel, relaxed, humming to the radio. Others lean forward, tense, waiting for something to happen. My new deputy, Carter, didn't do either. He just stared. It was his first night on the job, and the whole time we rolled through County Road 16, he sat beside me like a shadow, silent, calm, watching the road ahead. His face didn't move much. The kind of stillness that makes you think too much about what's going on underneath. It was almost midnight when we started roll call. The town was quiet, quieter than usual. The air had that thick weight to it, like a storm was circling somewhere just out of sight. I remember saying, "You can relax, Carter. You'll get used to the quiet out here." He turned his head slightly, just enough for the dashboard light to catch his eyes. They looked darker than I expected. Not empty, just too focused. He gave a small nod, but didn't speak. I let it go. Some rookies just take time to warm up. We stopped by the diner, grabbed coffee, checked the locks of the gas station, and did a quick loop past the old water tower. Routine. That's what keeps you sane in small towns. The routine. But that night, something in it felt off. Like the steps were the same, but the rhythm was wrong. When I keyed the radio for first status check, I got a soft static instead of dispatch's voice. It cleared up after a few seconds, but it left this faint hum, just a background tone that didn't belong there. Carter noticed it too. I saw his head tilt slightly, just listening. "You hear that?" I asked. He nodded again. Still no words. That hum stayed with us the rest of the shift. Low, steady, just under everything. Under the engine, under the tires, under our breathing. We kept driving, past the sawmill, past the river bend. At one point, I swear I saw him glance toward the tree line like something was walking out there. When I asked what he saw, he just said, "Nothing," and kept looking forward. It was the first word he said all night, the way he said it, though it didn't sound like he meant it. Around 1 a.m., we stopped near the old Peterson property. It's been abandoned since before I took office. A few kids used to sneak in, but nobody lives there now. The wind had picked up, rattling the loose boards and swinging the front gate open just enough to groan on its hinges. I stepped out to check it. Carter followed without being asked. "You don't have to come every time, rookie," I said. He didn't answer. He just looked at the house. Or maybe through it. The moonlight hit his face, and for a second, I saw something like confusion there. Not fear, not curiosity. More like he was trying to remember something. Inside the house, the air smelled like wet dust and pine. I shined my light around. Empty, just old furniture and a few spiderwebs. But in the corner near the fireplace, there was a single cup sitting on the floor. Fresh, clean, like someone had just set it there. I looked at Carter. "You see this?" He didn't move closer. He just whispered. Someone was here. Then quieter, maybe still is. It was the second thing he said all night. When we got back to the cruiser, the hum in the radio grew louder. It wasn't just background noise anymore. It was pulsing, rising and falling like breathing. I called dispatch again, asked if they could hear it. But the line was clear on their end. No hum, no distortion. I turned the volume down, but the noise didn't stop. It was still there, somewhere behind the static. I thought I heard a voice, faint, buried deep, like someone whispering from a long hallway. Carter reached out and turned the knob all the way to 0. The hum went silent. He looked at me and said, "Don't answer it." "Answer what?" I asked. He didn't explain. He just stared out the windshield again. And I swear, I started to feel it too. That same sense of being watched. Not from outside the car, but from inside the signal. We rode in silence after that. The roads blurred by. The fog rolled in thick, and the hum never really went away. It just moved somewhere else. Under my skin, maybe. Every now and then, I glanced at Carter. He sat perfectly still, eyes forward, lips pressed tight like he was holding something in. At 2:10 a.m., we pulled over by the bridge near Hollow Creek. That's where I first noticed a reflection. You see, the cruiser side mirror caught the both of us, me in the driver's seat, Carter beside me. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it felt. My reflection was fine, normal, but Carter's wasn't looking forward. It was staring at me. I blinked and looked again, and it fixed itself. Just a trick of the light. I told myself, the fog, the angle, the nerves. But my heart didn't buy it. Everything all right? I asked. He turned his head, slow. Yeah, he said. Just waiting. For what? He didn't answer. The rest of the shift dragged on in silence. We stopped for gas, ran one more sweep past the north end of town, and parked behind the station around 3:30. The radio finally went dead. No hum, no static, just quiet. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. When I turned to say something, maybe a joke, maybe just to break the tension, Carter was already staring at me. His face was half lit by the glow of the dash, and in that dim green light, his eyes looked hollow, like something deep inside had burned out a long time ago. You ever feel like the night's listening? He asked softly. I hesitated. What do you mean? He blinked slow, like it remembers who's out here. Before I could answer, the radio clicked on by itself. Just once. A small, sharp sound. Carter's hand went straight to the volume knob, but I stopped him. I grabbed the mic and said, Dispatch, you still there? Static. Then a voice. Quiet. Familiar. Mine. It was me. Saying, you shouldn't have come back. My blood went cold. Carter just sat there, not moving. Did you hear that? I whispered. He nodded once. Then he said, I told you not to answer it. The rest of that night is a blur in my head. I remember driving. Fast. I remember the hum growing louder until I couldn't think. I remember Carter watching me the whole time, calm as ever, like he'd been through it before. When we finally reached the edge of town, the noise stopped. Just like that. 1 second it was there, filling the world, and the next, gone. We sat in silence for a long time. The clock on the dash read 4:27. You okay? I asked. My voice sounded small, almost childlike. He looked at me, expression blank, and said, you won't see me after tonight. And he was right, because when I came in for my next shift, he wasn't there. His locker was empty. His uniform, his badge, gone. I asked dispatch what happened to Deputy Carter. They looked confused. Said there was no one by that name hired recently. No paperwork. No records. Nothing. I thought maybe I was losing it. Maybe I imagined him. A ghost of too many long nights. But then I went to the cruiser. His coffee cup was still there. Half full. Still warm. And when I turned the radio on, that hum came back. Low, steady, pulsing. And buried inside it, under all that static, I swear I heard his voice say my name. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, every time I drive past the bridge at Hollow Creek, I see a figure standing near the rail. Same uniform, same stillness. He doesn't wave, doesn't move, just watches me pass, like he's waiting for the next roll call. And sometimes, when the night goes too quiet, the hum comes back again, deep in the radio, deep in the wires, waiting to be answered. It was just after 2 in the morning when we got the call. A single vehicle accident on Route 9, an old prison transport bus. No details, no witnesses. Just a quick radio ping from dispatch. Unit 3, possible crash near mile marker 42. Unknown injuries. I was already half dead from the shift. Long nights blur together out here. The fields look the same, the trees never move, and the sky feels too wide, like it's waiting to swallow you whole. But a prison bus? That was new. Carter was riding with me again that night. He still hadn't said much since our last shift. Barely more than a few words, really. But when that call came in, he sat up straighter, like something about it mattered. He said quietly, they don't drive that route anymore. I frowned. What do you mean? He didn't answer, just stared out the window as the cruiser cut through the fog. It took us about 15 minutes to reach the scene. We saw it before we even hit the mile marker. The reflection of twisted metal shining under our headlights. The bus was halfway off the road, nose buried in the ditch, like it slid sideways and just stopped there to die. I slowed the cruiser and pulled over. The bus was completely dark. No hazard lights, no movement inside. The mud around it was wet and deep, like it had rained harder here than anywhere else. The smell hit next, gasoline and rust. That sharp, sour kind of air that burns the back of your throat. Carter got out first, flashlight in hand. I followed, crunching gravel under my boots. Sheriff's Department. I called out. Anyone alive in there? Nothing. Just a soft ticking of metal cooling in the cold. The windows were all fogged from the inside. That's what struck me first. Like someone had been breathing heavy in there. We climbed the steps one by one. The bus door was jammed, but I forced it open with my shoulder. Inside, it smelled like wet earth, like the woods after rain. And it was empty, not just of people, but of everything. No driver, no guards, no inmates. Even the seatbelts hung loose, unlatched, swinging slightly with the movement of the bus. The only thing left was a few drops of water on the floor, pooling between the seats. Carter swept his light across the interior. The beam stopped on a small white tag above the windshield. Caldwell Correctional. That's a prison 2 counties south. They shut down their transport unit 3 years ago. I remember because we used to run joint patrols with them. I said, "That place closed, didn't it?" Carter didn't respond. He was looking at something else. The rear door of the bus, wide open, mud smeared across the steps, but no footprints. None. I climbed down to check the ground. Nothing but deep puddles. No drag marks. No signs of a struggle. No tire tracks from another vehicle. Just nothing. The radio on my shoulder cracked. A short burst of static, like something whispering through interference. I tried to call dispatch, but the signal was gone again. I turned back toward the bus. Carter was still standing inside, his flashlight aimed at the back row. "You find something?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Look." I climbed in again, following his light. There, on the very last seat, etched into metal with what looked like a key or knife, were words. Still counting. The letters were jagged, uneven, fresh. My stomach turned. We spent the next hour combing the area. The ditch, the trees, even the creek that ran behind the embankment. No signs of anyone. But there was something strange about the dirt. I kept noticing spots where it looked like something had pressed into the ground. Not footprints exactly, just impressions like knees or hands. And in one place, right near the tree line, there were drag marks going uphill, not down, up. Carter crouched by them, running his hand over the mud. "They went toward the woods," he said. "Who?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just looked deeper into the trees. Then he whispered, "We should go." Back in the cruiser. The radio was dead silent again. I tried switching channels, but all I got was a faint hum, the same one I'd heard before. I don't know why, but I turned it up. For a moment, there was nothing but that steady tone. Then, just barely audible beneath it, I thought I heard a voice. A man's voice speaking numbers. 24, 25, 26. It stopped at 30. Then the hum cut off. I looked at Carter. "You heard that?" He nodded once. "They're still counting." Before I could ask what he meant, something slammed against the side of the cruiser. It wasn't an animal. It was too solid, too heavy. We both jumped out, flashlights up. The road was empty. The fog had thickened so much we could barely see 10 feet in front of us. "Probably a branch," I muttered, though my voice didn't sound convincing even to me. Carter didn't move. His light was fixed on the bus. The back door, the one that had been open, was now shut, completely closed. And for a second, I swore I saw a movement inside. Just a faint outline of shapes, like people sitting in the seats again. I took a few steps closer. My boots sank into the mud. The closer I got, the quieter everything became. The wind stopped. Even the frogs by the creek went silent. I was 5 feet from the door when I heard it. A sound like breathing, slow, heavy, and coming from inside the bus. I gripped my flashlight tighter, trying to steady my hand. Sheriff's Department. I called again. If anyone's in there, identify yourself. The breathing stopped. Then, all at once, the bus lights flickered on. The inside was empty again. I don't remember walking backward, but I must have, because suddenly I was near the cruiser, heart hammering in my chest. Carter hadn't moved an inch. He was still staring at the bus. I shouted, "Get in the car," but he didn't. He just whispered something I barely caught, something that froze me where I stood. They're already gone. When we got back to the station, I filed a report. Vehicle crash, unknown cause, no fatalities found. I didn't mention the voices. I didn't mention the numbers. But I did mention one thing, the bus's registration number. The next day, I got a call from a state investigator. He said, "Sheriff, that bus you found, you sure about that plate number?" "Yeah," I said. "I wrote it down myself." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he said, "That bus was destroyed in 1989. Full inmate transport. 29 dead." My hand went cold on the receiver. Destroyed. I repeated. "Burned," he said. "Caught fire on Route 9, near mile marker 42. Nobody survived. We buried the wreck years ago." That night, I drove out there again. Alone this time. The fog was gone. The ditch was dry. No sign of the bus. No tire marks. Nothing. But when I stepped out of the cruiser, I saw it carved into the guardrail this time. The same words. Still counting. I walked closer, tracing the letters with my hand. The metal was warm. And then, from somewhere behind me, in the woods, I heard it again. A man's voice. Low, steady, patient. 27, 28, 29. Then silence. The kind of silence that sticks to you. I don't take that route anymore. No one does. But every once in a while, the night dispatcher gets a strange call. Static. A man's voice counting. And when she checks the logs, it always comes from the same channel. The one we use that night. The one assigned to Unit 19. The one that's been marked inactive ever since the bus burned. There are things in this county I've learned not to question. Lights in the woods. Radios that whisper when they should be silent. But the cemetery, that one still gets under my skin. It started maybe 3 weeks after we found the prison bus. I hadn't been sleeping right since then. Every sound outside my window made me flinch. Even the hum of the refrigerator at night felt too alive, too steady, like it was breathing with me. Anyway, that's when we started getting the calls. People driving past St. Helena's Cemetery claimed the gates were open after midnight, every night, always at the same time, 12:03 a.m. Sometimes they said they saw someone walking between the graves. Other times, they said it was just the gates, swinging in the wind. I wanted to believe it was kids or vandals or just some stray animal tripping the sensors. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't that simple. Nothing ever is out here. That night, I decided to check it myself. I didn't take Carter. He hadn't been right since the bus. Barely spoke at all now. He'd just sit in the break room, staring at his hands, like he was trying to count something. So I went alone. The road to St. Helena runs through a stretch of farmland, open on both sides, with fences that look like they've been standing since before anyone alive could remember. The sky was black and starless, the kind of night where even your headlights feel too weak. I reached the cemetery just before midnight. The gates were closed, tall iron bars, chained at the center. I parked the cruiser, kept the engine running. Midnight came and went. Nothing. I remember checking my watch, 12:02 a.m., and thinking maybe it really was just talk. Then, as the seconds ticked by, I heard it. Click. A soft metallic snap. The chain fell, and the gates began to move. They didn't swing wildly like caught in the wind. They opened slow, deliberate, as if someone on the other side was pulling them. I froze, my hand halfway to the radio. Then I saw it, a figure, just inside the gate. They were tall, thin, wearing something dark that hung loose at the shoulders. I couldn't see a face, just the outline, standing perfectly still. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then the figure turned and started walking. Not toward me, toward the graves. I got out of the car, flashlight in hand, calling out, "Sheriff's Department! Who's there?" No answer, only the crunch of footsteps fading deeper into the rows of headstones. I stepped through the gates. The air felt colder instantly, like stepping into a basement. The smell hit me next, wet soil and old flowers, the kind left by families who stopped visiting long ago. The graves stretched far back into the trees, the newer ones near the front, the old markers half sunk and leaning in the back. I followed the light beam across cracked names and faded dates until I saw them again. That figure. They were kneeling now at one of the older plots. The headstone was so worn I could barely make out the writing. I said, "You're trespassing." Still no answer. I took another step, and that's when the flashlight flickered. Just a quick pulse of darkness. But in that moment, when the light went out, I heard whispering, not from the person. From around me, dozens of voices, all faint, overlapping, like a crowd mumbling during prayer. When the light came back on, the figure was gone. I spun around, shining the beam in every direction. Nothing. Then I noticed something strange. Every grave in that row had fresh dirt piled at the base, like someone had been digging. Not deep, just enough to disturb the ground. I crouched, touched one of the mounds. The soil was damp, cold, but there were no footprints, no tools, nothing to explain it. I stood there for what felt like a full minute before I turned back toward the gates. And that's when I saw the chain. It was back on, tied tight, only this time, the lock was different. Old, rusted, covered in moss. I hadn't seen that kind of lock in years. I tried the radio. Static. Again. So I started walking toward the cruiser. But as I passed the front row of graves, I caught sight of something that made me stop. A lantern, sitting on the ground beside one of the graves, lit with a steady orange flame. The name on the stone beside it read, Deputy Alan Carter. I stumbled back, shaking my head. No, that couldn't be. It had to be some mistake, some sick prank. But the date on the stone was fresh, just one day before. My heart started pounding. I felt dizzy. Then, somewhere deeper in the cemetery, I heard someone counting. 27, 28. That same slow voice from before, the one from the bus. I turned, shining the light toward the sound, and that's when I saw them. Figures. Not one, not two, dozens, all standing among the graves. Still as statues, each holding a faint glow. Candles, lanterns, flashlights. Their faces were pale, gray, hard to see clearly through the mist rising from the ground. And every one of them was looking right at me. I ran. I don't even remember making it to the cruiser. Just the sound of my boots slamming the ground and the gate slamming shut behind me. I jumped inside, started the engine, and floored it down the road. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely keep the wheel straight. In the rear-view mirror, I could still see the cemetery fading in the distance and those faint lights moving between the stones. I didn't stop driving until I hit the station lot. When I burst inside, I told dispatch what I saw. The gates, the lights, the names. She looked at me like I'd lost it. "Sheriff," she said, "Carter clocked out 10 minutes ago. He's home." I didn't sleep that morning. I couldn't. At sunrise, I drove straight to his place. His car was in the driveway. Lights off. I knocked, called his name. No answer. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house smelled like old dust and rain-soaked clothes. The kitchen light flickered, and in the middle of the table, a small notebook, open. Every page was filled with numbers, written over and over. 27, 28, 29, and then one final line. They walk until they're counted. By noon, I went back to the cemetery with 2 deputies. The gates were chained shut again, different lock this time. We cut it when inside. No fresh dirt, no lantern, no headstone with Carter's name. It was just a cemetery again. Quiet, empty, old. But something had changed. On the far side, near the trees, I noticed a new marker that hadn't been there before. Small, unmarked. The earth around it was freshly turned. I didn't tell the others. We left the gate open on the way out. That night, I sat alone in my office. The whole building was silent. The only light came from the radio on my desk. At 12:03 it crackled. A faint voice. Counting. 30, 31. Then silence. I stared at the radio until the static died completely. When I looked out the window, I could see the hill where St. Helena sat. Even from that far away, I swore I saw the faintest orange glow drifting through the fog. Lanterns, moving between graves. Still walking, still counting. Sometimes now, when I drive past that place on patrol, I keep my eyes forward. I don't look toward the gates anymore, because I know if I do, I'll see them standing there, waiting for me to finish the count. And if I ever stop counting with them, I think they'll start counting me. There are nights out here when the world feels stretched thin, like the darkness isn't just outside, but pressing against the glass, trying to get in. That night was one of them. Carter and I have been driving the county line for hours, checking old roads and dirt paths that haven't seen another soul in decades. It was one of those shifts where nothing happens, but something feels wrong anyway. He sat in the passenger seat, same as always, silent, hands resting on his lap, eyes fixed straight ahead. I used to think he was just quiet by nature, a good deputy, just not talkative. But lately, that silence had started to weigh on me, like it wasn't peace at all. It was hiding. The only sound inside the cruiser was the hum of the radio and the tires against the gravel. Outside, the wind scraped through the fields like it was dragging its feet. I don't know why, but I found myself talking, just to fill the space. Feels like the whole county's holding its breath tonight. Carter didn't move, didn't blink. The headlights carved through the fog, and for a second, I thought I saw someone standing at the edge of the road, tall, still, facing us. But when we passed the spot, there was nothing there. I slowed down, checked the mirror. Still nothing. That's when I noticed Carter watching me, not turning his head, just his eyes. Something wrong? I asked. He kept staring. Then, slow as if remembering how, he said, "You ever think about what happens when we don't go home?" His voice was low, calm, but it didn't sound right, like it hadn't been used in a long time. I laughed a little, just to ease the tension. "You mean like retirement?" He didn't smile. "When we don't go home," he said again, "we keep the shift." I didn't know what to say to that. He turned back toward the windshield, whispering something I couldn't catch. It sounded like numbers. I recognized that from before the counting. "Carter," I said, "try to sound casual. You all right, man?" He didn't answer. The radio crackled softly. Static, then a voice breaking through. "Unit 19, do you copy?" I picked up the mic. "This is Sheriff Lane. I copy. Go ahead." Nothing. Just that hollow hiss. "Unit 19. I froze. That was Carter's old call sign. He hadn't used it in years. Not since before I took the badge. I turned toward him again, but he was already looking at me. "You heard that, right?" I asked. He nodded once, slowly. His eyes looked different now, like he wasn't just tired, but far away. Then, softly, he said, "That's me." The way he said it didn't make sense, like he was answering a roll call. "That's me," he repeated, this time louder. I put the car in park and reached for the radio again. "Dispatch confirm. Who's calling Unit 19? No reply, just a static, then a faint whisper buried inside it. My name. I stared at the radio like it might bite me. Then I looked back at Carter. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but something else. His fingers were pale, almost gray, like the blood had stopped moving. He said, "You should have stayed home tonight." I tried to play it off. "What's that supposed to mean?" He didn't blink. "You weren't supposed to be here when the count reached 32. My stomach dropped. That number again. The one from the cemetery. I felt this slow, crawling dread move up my spine. I wanted to step out of the cruiser, breathe, do anything but sit there with him. But I didn't move. I just watched as he turned his hands over, staring at his palms like he'd never seen them before. "They buried me wrong," he said. "At first, I thought I misheard him." "What?" He looked at me. "They buried me without the badge." I wasn't done with my shift. The cruiser suddenly felt smaller. The air went cold, like the heater had died. I reached for the door handle, and that's when the headlights flickered. For a heartbeat, the world outside vanished, And when the light came back, we weren't on the road anymore. I swear to God, the cruiser was parked in the middle of the cemetery, St. Helena. The gate stood open, the same as that night. Lanterns glowed faintly between the graves. My breath fogged the windshield. I turned to Carter, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring out the window, eyes glassy, lips moving without sound. "Carter," I yelled, shaking his shoulder. He blinked, turned toward me, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. His skin was cracked. Not bleeding, not bruised, just cracked, like something dried and forgotten. "I never left," he said quietly. "None of you did." He opened the door before I could stop him and stepped out into the fog. The sound of his boots on gravel was heavy and distant at the same time, like it was coming from underwater. I followed him out, calling his name again, but when I got around in front of the cruiser, he was gone. The cemetery stretched out before me, every grave faintly glowing beneath the mist. And then I heard it, that voice from the radio. "Unit 19, report your status." It came from somewhere behind me. I turned, shining my flashlight toward the sound, and there he was, Carter, standing beside a headstone. His uniform was torn mud-streaked, the badge half buried under his collar. He looked the same, and not at all, like I was looking at a photograph of him burned around the edges. He said, "You're hearing the end of the shift." I stepped closer, shaking my head. "You're alive, Carter. You're standing right there. We drove here. Together." He looked down at the grave beside him. My light followed. It read, Deputy Alan Carter. End of watch, October 12th. My throat went dry. I couldn't breathe. That was tonight's date. "You didn't make it home," he said softly. Then he smiled, small, tired. "Neither did I." I stumbled back, tripping over the uneven ground. The flashlight fell, the beam cutting wild through fog. When I picked it up again, he was gone. The radio inside the cruiser crackled again. "Unit 19, copy?" I climbed in, slammed the door, grabbed the mic. "This is Sheriff Lane. I copy." Silence. Then, faint and broken. "Shift's over, Sheriff." The headlights flared bright, and for a split second, I saw someone sitting in the passenger seat beside me. Not Carter. Not exactly. Something wearing his shape. Its head turned slow, the face half in shadow, half bone. Its voice came through both the air and the radio at once. "You shouldn't have kept driving." Then it was gone. The seat was empty again. I started the engine, floored it out of there. The world outside blurred, the road, the trees, the mist, all twisting together until I wasn't sure what was real anymore. By the time I made it back to the station, the sun was coming up. I went straight to records, pulled Carter's file. It was there, same as always, only the date of death had been filled in. October 12th, last night, signed by me, my own name, my own handwriting, but I hadn't written it. At least, I don't remember doing it. Now, every night when I start my shift, I glance at the passenger seat. Sometimes I catch a reflection in the glass. Sometimes I hear the seat creak. The radio still crackles around midnight. Sometimes it's just static. Sometimes it's breathing. And sometimes it's his voice. Unit 19 reporting in. When that happens, I answer him. Because part of me thinks if I don't, he'll come find me again, to remind me that none of us really clock out. We just keep driving the same roads, again and again, until someone else takes our place. There's something different about fog when it rolls off water. It doesn't move like normal fog. It crawls, folds over itself like it's thinking. I used to love Miller's Lake. I grew up fishing there as a kid, but lately that place has a weight to it, like the air gets thick enough to choke you. It was a Tuesday night when the call came in. A fisherman named Riley said there was a boat spinning circles out near the center of the lake. No driver, no lights, just looping over and over in the fog. We get weird calls all the time. Lights in the woods, coyotes that sound like crying children. But something in Riley's voice made me drive out there myself. When I pulled up, the mist was already swallowing the far shore. The floodlight from the dock barely reached 30 feet before vanishing into gray. You couldn't even see the moon, just a dull, glowing bruise behind the clouds. Riley was waiting near his truck, shaking, holding a thermos like it was keeping him alive. He said, "It's been going for over an hour, Sheriff. Just spinning. Nobody in it." I nodded, told him to stay back, and walked down to the dock. The boards groaned under my boots. You could smell the rot rising from the water, the kind of damp that never leave your clothes. And then I heard it, the sound of an engine, distant but steady, a soft sputtering, then a hum. I leaned forward, trying to spot movement, but the fog was too thick. It looked like smoke caught in headlights. Then I saw it, a small aluminum fishing boat, maybe 20 feet out, its engine idled, propeller chopping slow circles into the lake. It turned lazily, over and over, like something mechanical was keeping alive. I called out, "Hello, this is the Sheriff's Department. Anyone out there?" No response. The boat didn't slow down, didn't drift. It just kept circling. The fog pulsed around it like it was breathing. I thought maybe someone had fallen in. So I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the old rowboat tied to the dock. The water lapped against the wood, cold and oily. I rowed closer, careful not to lose sight of the dock behind me. The farther I went, the quieter everything became. Even the frogs stopped. When I finally reached the circling boat, I hooked its side and pulled it close. It was empty. No fishing poles, no cooler, no jacket, just a single boot lying near the stern, half full of water. The engine coughed, then steadied again. I reached for the throttle to kill it, but the moment my hand touched the handle, the boat stopped moving. The propeller froze mid-spin, like someone had hit pause, and the silence that followed wasn't normal silence. It was heavy, full of pressure, like the air itself was holding its breath. Then, from somewhere in that fog, I heard splashing. At first, it sounded like a fish jumping, but it kept going, rhythmic, slow, getting closer. I shined my flashlight toward the sound, but all it did was bounce off the mist. The beam was too weak. It felt like the darkness was thicker than light. Then I saw something ripple beneath the surface, long, dark like a rope. It moved toward me, cutting through the water without sound. I grabbed the oar, ready to push away, when I heard a voice. Help! It was faint but clear, a woman's voice, coming from the fog to my right. Please help me. I froze. Where are you? I called. No answer. Just the sound of the boat engine sputtering back to life. I looked down. The throttle had moved on its own. The boat started spinning again. I tried to climb over to it, but the rowboat rocked hard beneath me. Something hit the underside. Once, twice, like a fist pounding from below. Then I saw a hand, pale, thin. It broke the surface beside me, fingers clawing at the edge of the rowboat. I nearly fell backward. Jesus! I shouted, reaching down. Hold on. But when I grabbed it, it was ice cold, not the kind of cold from water. This was deeper, and as I pulled, the fingers bent wrong, like the bones inside weren't there anymore. The hand slid away, vanishing beneath the water. Then I saw another one, farther out. Then another, all around the boats. Small ripples, hands reaching just above the surface before slipping back down. The engine roared. The circling boat turned sharply, heading straight toward me. I jumped into it just before the rowboat flipped. For a moment, I lay there, chest heaving, trying to make sense of anything. When I looked up, the fog had thickened. I couldn't see the shore. The lake was nothing but gray water and moving shadows. I took the wheel, turned the engine off again, and waited. My reflection in the water was barely visible, but something else was there too, just beneath it. It looked like a face. Not clear, not whole, just the outline of eyes, watching. I blinked and it was gone. I tried the radio, but all I got was static. Every channel buzzed the same way, low and broken, like it was whispering. Then, faintly, I heard something beneath the static. Don't follow it. The voice was mine. That's when I realized the boat was moving again. The engine wasn't on, but the water beneath me was pulling, slow at first, then stronger. It was like the whole lake was breathing in. The fog started to thin near the center, revealing something dark floating in the distance. It wasn't another boat. It was a dock. A small wooden platform that shouldn't exist there. No records showed one. No old maps mentioned it. But it was there, rotted boards slick with algae, a single lamppost standing in the middle, still glowing faint yellow. As I drifted closer, I saw something hanging from the post. A life jacket, then another, then 6 more, nailed in a row. Each one had a name written in black marker across the chest. The last one read R. Miller, the lake's namesake. He'd gone missing 15 years ago. Drowned. I remember that case. His body was never found. The boat bumped softly against the side of the platform. The sound echoed like a heartbeat. And then I heard the splashing again, closer, circling. I looked down just in time to see bubbles rise from beneath the boat, dozens of them, popping in clusters like someone was breathing out. Then, slowly, a head broke the surface. I'll never forget that face. Pale, bloated, eyes wide open, mouth moving soundlessly, hair drifting like weeds in the current. It was him, Robert Miller. He looked straight at me and smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a sad one, just knowing. Then another head surfaced, and another. Men, women, all of them with the same open eyes, same stretched grin. Dozens now, circling the dock like the boat had before. The water churned beneath them, dark and thick, but they didn't sink. They just kept watching. The fog folded back in, swallowing the lamppost, the names, everything. When I finally came to, I was lying on the bank near my cruiser. The sun was coming up. The water was still again. My radio was buzzing. Dispatch said Riley found my cruiser running, but no one inside. So he went home and called it in. They'd been looking for me all night. The funny thing is, the boat wasn't there. Neither of them were. But the dock was. We took pictures of it before it sank back under later that day, like it was never supposed to be seen. And when I looked at those photos later, there were 8 life jackets, not 7. The new one had a name I didn't recognize at first. Then I realized it was written in my handwriting. Sheriff Lane. I don't go near that lake anymore. No one does. Not after the fog came back 3 nights in a row. But sometimes when I drive that stretch of road and the air's just right, I hear it again. The faint buzz of an engine, turning slow circles in the mist. And underneath it, a voice. Soft, familiar. Don't follow it. I never do. Not anymore. Because I know now what's waiting out there. And it already knows my name. The fog still clung to the lake 3 days after that night. It sat low, stubborn, like it was waiting for something. I hadn't planned to go back. But when you wear this badge long enough, you learn the difference between what you want to do and what you have to. They said a group of kids found something near the old boathouse, just under the dock, close to where the water gets deep fast. They didn't stick around long enough to explain what it was, only that it wasn't human anymore. I should have sent someone else, but I needed to see it for myself. Miller's Lake had been quiet since the fog came back. Too quiet. The birds stopped nesting near it. Even the air smelled wrong, like rain that never falls. When I stepped onto the dock, the wood groaned under my boots. It was slick, swollen from the constant damp. I kept expecting it to give way. The water beneath me barely moved, just soft ripples, spreading like breath from something sleeping below. And for a second, I almost believed that's what the lake was. Alive, sleeping, and we'd been the ones to wake it. I crouched near the edge and aimed my flashlight down. Nothing but black water. Still, I could feel it. The pull, like gravity, but sideways, drawing me closer. I got down on my stomach and leaned over, shining the light deeper. The reflection looked wrong. It wasn't me staring back. It looked like someone standing just behind my shoulder. I jerked up fast, swinging the light around. No one there, just fog. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves. Then I noticed the air had changed. Colder, wet, but sharp like the inside of a freezer. And the smell, sweet, rotten but not new, like fruit left too long in the sun. That's when I saw it. At first, it looked like fabric caught on a piling, pale, rippling in the current. But when I leaned closer, I realized it wasn't cloth. It was skin. A human hand floated just beneath the surface. Palm up, fingers gently waving with the current. I stared at it for a long time before moving closer. It didn't look like it had been there long. The skin was pale but whole. No bloating, no decay. Even the fingernails looked clean. But there was something off, something too still about it. I reached out with the end of my flashlight, trying to lift it higher when the hand twitched. Just once, enough to make me fall backward and nearly slip off the dock. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I stayed there, staring, waiting for it to move again. It didn't. The hand drifted softly back down, disappearing into darkness. I should have gone back to the cruiser, called for backup. But something in me, something I can't explain, told me not to. It wasn't curiosity. It was closer to recognition. I'd seen that hand before, or at least I thought I had. I tied a line to one of the dock posts and eased myself down the ladder until the cold water hit my knees. The lake was still heavy, pressing against my legs. Every sound felt muffled, like I was inside a heartbeat. When I reached the point where the hand had been, I aimed my flashlight straight down, and I saw faces, dozens of them, floating beneath the dock, suspended just a few feet under the surface. Eyes closed, bodies still, men, women, even children, all pale, all preserved, like the water had frozen them in time. They weren't bloated or damaged. Their skin was smooth, hair still drifting softly as if they were only sleeping. One woman had a locket around her neck. Inside was a tiny picture, so faded I couldn't make out the faces, but one of them looked familiar. Too familiar. I dropped the locket. It sank, disappearing between the others. That's when I realized I recognized several of them. Names from old case files, missing persons, people we'd never found. Their disappearances went back decades, some even before I was born, but they were all here, and none of them had aged a day. My breath fogged up the beam of my light. I whispered, Jesus Christ, but even my own voice sounded foreign. The faces below me began to move. Not a lot, just small motions, like something stirring under the skin. One turned slightly, then another, and as they moved, their eyes opened. Hundreds of them, all at once. Their eyes glowed faintly in the beam, milky, almost silver. They didn't blink, didn't rise. They just watched me. I stumbled back, nearly losing the flashlight. The beam cut across the water, catching more faces, more eyes, all turned upward. I climbed out fast, scraping my knees against the wood, pulling myself onto the dock. My chest hurt from how fast I was breathing. I kept saying, no, 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 under my breath, like a prayer that didn't work. When I finally stood, I saw a movement on the far end of the dock, something dripping wet, crouched low, like a man crawling on all fours. The fog hid most of it, but I could hear it, each step heavy and deliberate, with creaking beneath its weight. I called out, "Who's there?" No response. Then the air filled with the sound of water dripping, steady as a clock, and beneath it the whisper. At first, I thought it came from behind me, but it was coming from below. The water. I knelt, flashlight shaking in my hand. The ripples had stopped completely. It was like the lake had gone still to listen. Then I heard it again. Stay. The word came from beneath the dock. Not loud, just soft, close to my ear, like someone speaking through glass. I backed up, slipping on the wet boards. And that's when the figure at the end of the dock started walking toward me, step by step, slow, dragging footsteps. It was tall, lean, head tilted to one side. Water dripped from its fingers. The closer it came, the clearer it got. Its skin looked waxy, pale like the others, but I could see the uniform underneath, a sheriff's uniform. Mine. I froze. The name patch was almost gone, but I could still make out the letters. Eleni. It stopped a few feet away, and then, in a voice that sounded half underwater, it said, "You shouldn't have come back." The voice was mine too. I stumbled backward, flashlight flickering as the dock trembled beneath me. The boards cracked, water sloshing through the gaps. The thing, me, took another step, and the sound echoed like thunder. Its mouth didn't move when it spoke again. They don't forget. Behind it, the lake began to stir, dozens of heads rising slowly. Faces I'd just seen beneath the water, now breaking the surface. They moved like puppets, perfectly still except for the way the water pushed them upward. I turned to run, but the dock groaned and split. One board gave way, plunging my leg into the freezing water. Hands grabbed me from below, cold, hard, fingers locking around my ankle. I kicked, screaming, pulling free as splinters cut into my palms. When I looked back, the faces were gone again. The water was calm, and I was alone. By the time I made it back to the cruiser, my flashlight had died. The fog followed me up the hill, curling around the tires like smoke. I didn't tell dispatch what I'd seen. Didn't even file a full report. I just said there was nothing under the dock. No evidence. No remains. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces underwater, still waiting, untouched by time. And the worst part? When I went back the next morning to check again, the dock was gone. The lake looked the same as it always had. Flat, empty, silent. But the air carried that same cold sweetness. And in the ripples near the shore, I thought I saw something glint. I walked closer. It was a locket, the same one from before. But this time, when I opened it, I could see the faces clearly. A woman, a little girl, and a man. The man was me. Now I keep in my desk drawer. Some nights it hums. Just barely, like there's water trapped inside. And when the fog rolls in again, I can smell that sweetness in the air, that frozen rot. The station phone rings sometimes after midnight, and when I pick up, there's only silence. Just the sound of water. I tell myself it's the wind, but deep down I know the truth. Those people under the dock, they're not gone. They're waiting. And one day, when the fog comes back for good, I think they'll be waiting for me. There's something about still water that always made me uneasy. It's too perfect, too quiet, like a mirror pretending to be calm while hiding something just beneath the surface. That morning, Miller's Lake looked like glass. The fog had finally started to lift, curling up into the trees like smoke after a fire. And for the first time in weeks, I could see the whole shoreline, the docks, the old water tower, the empty cabins no one had lived in since the 70s. I parked the cruiser near the edge and stepped out. The air was cold enough to bite my lungs, but the silence was what hit hardest. No wind, no birds, just the sound of my boots crunching against wet gravel. I'd come out here because the dispatcher said someone reported hearing a man's voice by the lake. No one was supposed to be out this far. No fishing, no boats, no late-night campfires. This area had been sealed off after what I found under the dock. But I still came back, because the voice they'd heard, they said it was calling my name. At first, I thought it was a prank. Kids messing around. But as I got closer to the water, I saw something that made me stop cold. My reflection, or what I thought was mine. I was standing near the edge, but the man in the water wasn't. He was closer, just inches from the surface, face tilted up, eyes open wide. And he was smiling. I blinked, leaned forward a bit, thinking maybe it was a trick of the light. But then I noticed something strange. The reflection wasn't wearing my uniform. He was in plain clothes, dark, old-fashioned, like something out of another decade, and his lips moved. At first, I thought I imagined it, but then the words came, soft and broken, rising up through the still air. Sheriff Lane. I stepped back so fast I almost slipped on the rocks. The sound hadn't come from the water. It had come from me, from inside my own head, like I'd remembered someone saying it, even though no one had. The fog began to clear even more, pulling back across the lake until everything looked too sharp, too real. The reflection stared up at me, mouth still moving. I couldn't hear the words now, but I could see them forming, syllables shaping my name again and again. That smile never left his face. It wasn't mocking. It wasn't kind either. It was the kind of smile someone gives you when they know something you don't. I crouched near the edge, water just a few inches from my boots, and whispered, "Who are you?" The man in the water tilted his head slightly, the way you do when you're listening to something far away. Then he mouthed something I didn't want to believe. "You are..." I froze. The surface rippled slightly, breaking his face apart. But when it settled again, he looked closer. Too close. I could see the details now. The scar under his right eye, the lines on his forehead, the little chip on his front tooth. Every detail exactly like mine. I remember touching my own face, half expecting to feel water instead of skin. But no, it was me, still breathing, still standing on the shore. Only now, the reflection wasn't copying me anymore. When I moved my hand, it didn't. When I leaned in, it stood still. It just kept looking at me like I'd done something wrong. And maybe I had. Maybe going back to this lake, after everything I'd seen under it, was a mistake. Maybe the water didn't forget. Stop it, I said, my voice shaking. You're not real. The reflection blinked for the first time. Then it whispered, this time loud enough to hear. Then why can I see you? I stumbled backward, nearly tripping on the rocks. The sound came from the water itself. No echo, no trick. The ripples spread out from the reflection's mouth like breath. My radio crackled. A burst of static, loud and sharp. I grabbed it, hoping for anything normal. Sheriff Lane, do you copy? It was dispatch. But the voice didn't sound right. Too flat, too calm. I said, go ahead. Silence. Then, slowly, step closer. The words weren't coming through the speaker anymore. They were inside my head again, and they sounded like me. I dropped the radio. It hit the ground and rolled into the shallows. The reflection smile widened, teeth showing now. It looked hungry. You left them, it said. I shook my head. No, it tilted its head. Under the dock. You left them all. My knees went weak. I stared down at him, that perfect, still copy of me, and something inside me cracked, because it was right. I had left them. I told myself there was nothing under the dock, told everyone there were no bodies, no evidence, because saying otherwise would have made it real. I'd buried it all under silence. The reflection whispered again, voice soft like the water itself. You belong here too. And then it moved. The face rose closer, breaking the surface just enough that the lips touched air. I heard it breathe. That's when I realized it wasn't a reflection at all. It was something beneath me, mimicking the surface, something that wanted to be seen. I took a step back, then another, but the water didn't let go. It followed. The reflection stretched with me, climbing up the ripples, face still locked to mine. Then its hand reached up from the surface. Flat, perfect, fingers spread wide. There was no splash, no sound, just water, shaped like my hand, rising out to meet mine. And before I could move, it grabbed me, cold, so cold it burned. I yanked, but it pulled harder, dragging me toward the lake. The ground beneath me gave way, mud sucking at my boots. For a moment, I thought it would take me under, but the hand stopped halfway, still gripping, still holding, before slowly letting go. When I looked down again, the reflection wasn't smiling anymore. It looked sad, or maybe disappointed. The fog rolled back in fast, like it was trying to cover what I'd seen. By the time I reached the cruiser, the water looked normal again. Still empty, but when I looked in the side mirror before driving off, my stomach turned. The reflection staring back at me wasn't moving its lips, but I could still see them forming words. Slow, careful, come back. That night, I couldn't shake it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face, mine but not mine, beneath the surface. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something that made my skin crawl. When I'd first seen the reflection, it had a scar under its right eye, but I didn't, until the next morning. That's when I noticed it in the mirror while shaving. A faint line, small but real, right where it had been. I don't know how it got there. No cut, no bruise. Just there. And when I ran my thumb over it for a second, I swear I felt water. I tried staying away from the lake after that, but it's hard to ignore something that knows your name. I hear it sometimes when I'm out on patrol. Faint, just under the hum of the radio, like an echo bouncing off the static. Sheriff Lane, always the same voice, always just above a whisper. And when I drive past a road that leads to Miller's Lake, I can see the fog sitting there again, thick as it was at night. I tell myself not to stop, not to look, not to answer, but deep down I know it's waiting. The water remembers faces, and reflections never forget. I've driven Route 9 more times than I can count. It's a stretch of cracked two-lane road that cuts through the quiet part of the county. No streetlights, no signs, nothing but pine trees and silence for miles. At night, it feels endless, like it doesn't lead anywhere. That night, I was chasing a suspect in a stolen pickup. He'd blown through 2 stop signs outside of town, nearly clipped a school bus, then took off toward the county line. The roads were slick with rain, and my wipers could barely keep up. The air smelled like wet asphalt and gasoline, that sharp, heavy mix that always reminded me of old wrecks. Dispatch told me to back off. They said county lines weren't worth dying over. But I couldn't stop. Not when I saw his taillights still cutting through the fog ahead of me, bright red, like eyes in the dark. I pushed the cruiser harder than I should have. Speedometer needle trembling, engine whining, siren echoing off the trees. For a while, it felt like the world had shrunk to nothing but that road and those lights. Then the pickup vanished. No brake lights, no turn. Just gone. I slowed down, scanning the fog. Nothing, only the hum of the cruiser's engine and the low hiss of the rain. Then I saw it. A small gas station sign glowing through the mist. Martin's Fuel Stop. I'd been there before. Old, rusted pumps. Fluorescent lights that never worked right. The kind of place that always looked abandoned, even when it wasn't. I pulled in, tires crunching on the gravel. The rain had eased to a drizzle. No sign of the truck. No tracks. No wet prints. Nothing. But what bothered me most was the time. It was still 2:47 a.m., exactly the same minute as when I'd passed the county marker 10 miles back. I shut off the siren, stepped out, and walked toward the building. The lights flickered overhead, buzzing like angry insects. The glass door was smeared with rain, and inside I could see the clerk behind the counter. A tall guy, maybe in his 50s, with a gray mustache and tired eyes. He didn't look surprised to see me. Just nodded once, like he'd been waiting. "Evening, Sheriff," he said, "rough weather out." I told him I was chasing a vehicle that might have turned off this way. He shook his head slowly. "Haven't seen anyone all night. You're the first car in hours." There was something off about the way he said it. Too calm, like it wasn't the first time he'd told me that. I looked around the store. Shelves of old snacks, motor oil, and faded magazines that hadn't moved in years. Everything smelled like damp cardboard. When I turned back to the counter, the clerk was gone. No door open, no sound. Just gone. Then the lights flickered. Twice. And suddenly I was back in the cruiser. Engine running. Siren off. And the road ahead, it was the same stretch I'd started on. The same mile marker. The same pine trees. And up ahead, through the fog, the same taillights. My chest went cold. For a moment, I thought I blacked out. Maybe the chase had looped back somehow, or I'd turned without realizing. But no, I knew this road. Every curve, every dip. There was no loop. Still, I hit the gas. The taillights grew brighter again, and I followed. Faster, determined to end it. But then I saw the sign again. Martin's Fuel Stop. Same glow, same flicker. The rain was heavier now, pounding against the windshield. The clock on the dash still read 2:47 a.m. I pulled in again. Same gravel. Same crunch under the tires. And there he was, the same clerk at the counter, gray mustache, same half smile. "Evening, Sheriff," he said, voice exactly the same. "Rough weather out." I didn't answer, just stared at him, watching for any sign of difference. But everything matched, even the coffee stain on his shirt pocket. "You've seen me before, haven't you?" I asked. He tilted his head, still smiling. "Maybe." I stepped closer. "How many times have I been here tonight?" The lights flickered again, buzzing. When they came back on, the clerk wasn't smiling anymore. "Enough," he said quietly. "Enough to know you won't stop." That hit me harder than it should have. There was something behind his voice, not anger, not threat, but exhaustion, like he'd watched me make the same mistake over and over again. I turned to the door, heart pounding, and saw my cruiser idling outside, headlights cutting through the fog. But there was something wrong with the reflection in the glass. It wasn't me in the driver's seat. It was someone else wearing my uniform. I ran outside, gun drawn, shouting for whoever was to get out. But when I got to the car, it was empty. Driver's door open, engine still running, radio humming faintly with static. And then I noticed the mud prints on the pavement. Boot prints. Same size, same tread. Leading away from the car. They went straight toward the gas station door. Mine hadn't. That's when I realized I'd never left the car the first time. At least, not like I thought. I followed the prints slowly, my flashlight beam shaking in my hand. The air felt thicker now, like breathing through wet cloth. When I pushed open the gas station door again, the bell above it didn't ring. Inside, it was empty. No clerk, no sound. Just a faint smell of gasoline and something else. Something metallic, like old blood. The lights flickered once more. And for a brief second, everything was gone. The shelves, the counter, even the walls. Only the sound of rain and the echo of my own breathing. Then it all came back, but not the same. The shelves were toppled, the windows shattered. Dust and cobwebs hung thick in the air, and the floor was covered in leaves. It looked like no one had been here in years. The sign outside no longer glowed. The pumps were rusted down to skeletons. And when I looked at the clock on the wall, it was still frozen at 2:47 a.m. I stepped back out into the night, but the fog was so thick now I couldn't even see the cruiser. Only the faint red flash of its taillights, pulsing through the mist like a heartbeat. I started walking toward it, but with every step, the sound of gravel beneath my boots changed, softer, wetter, until it wasn't gravel anymore. It was water, cold, shallow, rising around my ankles. I looked down, and for just a moment, I saw the reflection of those same red taillights in the water, and another reflection beside mine, a man in uniform, standing perfectly still. Same badge, same name, me. He raised his hand slowly, palm out, as if to stop me. Then he mouthed something I could barely read. Don't. The taillights blinked once. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was parked back on Route 9. The engine was cold. The rain had stopped. The dashboard clock still read 2:47 a.m. And in the rearview mirror, I could see the gas station sign, glowing faintly through the fog behind me, just like before. Same light, same hum. I didn't go back. I didn't even look. I just turned the cruiser around and drove the other way until the skies started pale and the road finally changed. New signs, new mile markers. But when I got back to the station, the dispatcher looked at me funny, said I'd never called in about a pursuit, said there hadn't been any chases that night at all. And when I checked the logbook later, the last call from Route 9 was dated 3 years ago. Same road, same hour, same report, same name on the file. Mine. I didn't sleep much after that night on Route 9. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw those red taillights bleeding through the fog. Every time I looked at the clock, it was 2:47 a.m. I told myself it was exhaustion, maybe stress, maybe just my mind playing tricks after the chase. But deep down, I knew better. Something had followed me back from that road. Something that didn't belong to the living. A few nights later, I was back on patrol. Same uniform, same belt, same gun. But it all felt heavier now. The radio crackled softly beside me. Static and faint voices, none of which I could make out. The dispatcher called in about a possible stranded vehicle near Martin's fuel stop. My stomach tightened when I heard the name. I didn't want to go back there, but I had to. That's my job. It was 2:41 a.m. when I turned onto Route 9. The road looked the same, slick, empty, and endless. The pine trees leaned close, their branches brushing against the fog like fingers. And even before I reached the gas station, I saw it again, the glow of that old sign through the mist. Martin's fuel stop. Only this time, there was another cruiser parked by the pumps. I slowed down, headlights cutting across the lot. Rain had started again, gentle at first, then heavier, drumming on the hood. The other patrol car looked like mine. Same model, same color, even the same dent in the bumper. At first, I thought maybe someone from the next county had responded before me. But the number on the side door, it was my unit number. Exactly mine. My throat went dry. I parked next to it and stepped out. The rain soaked through my hat instantly. and the air smelled like cold metal and wet oil. I walked around the cruiser, checking the plates. Same ones, same scratches, same mud splatter on the rear fender. That's when the driver's door opened, and another deputy stepped out. He looked about my age. Same height, same uniform, same badge shining faintly under flickering lights. He gave me a small nod, like we'd already met. "Evening," he said. His voice was calm, too calm, and when I looked closer, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. His face. It was mine, every detail, every line, even the small scar near my jaw from when I fell off my bike as a kid. I froze. The rain filled the silence between us, steady and cold. "You all right, Sheriff?" he asked. I didn't answer. Couldn't, because I saw his badge glint in the light. Badge number 412. My number. I stepped closer, trying to understand what I was seeing. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone had copied my uniform somehow. But the man standing in front of me wasn't pretending. He wasn't acting. He looked exactly like me, not just in face, but in the way he moved, the way he stood, the way he breathed. And his eyes, they weren't quite right, like they were seeing something behind me that I couldn't turn a look at. "What are you doing out here?" I finally asked. The words came out shaky. He smiled faintly. "Same as you," he said. "Patrolling." I stared at him. "You're not with the department." He tilted his head. You know that." I swallowed hard. "No, I don't." "Yes, you do," he said softly. "You were there the night it happened." The wind picked up, pushing the fog across the lot in slow waves. For a moment, I thought I saw movement behind him, a dark outline near the pumps. But when I blinked, it was gone. "What happened?" I asked. I didn't know why I said it, but part of me needed to hear his answer. He looked down at his hands, like he was remembering something he didn't want to. "It was raining. Like this," he said quietly. "I was chasing a truck across the county line. Lost sight of it. Ended up here." My stomach turned to stone. That was my story. He looked back up, and then something came out of the fog. His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. Didn't have a face, just eyes, red ones, like brake lights. I took a step back, my boots splashing in a shallow puddle. He didn't move, just watched me, like he already knew every thought running through my head. "Who are you?" I asked. He smiled again, but it wasn't friendly. It was tired, sad. "I used to ask the same thing," he said, "every night." He turned his head slightly, and for a moment, I thought I saw a faint scar running down the side of his neck, a scar shaped like a rope burn. My heart started hammering. "What do you mean, every night?" He looked at the gas station door. I tried leaving once. Drove all the way down Route 9 till the sky turned gray. Thought I'd made it out. He paused. But when I looked up, I was right back here. Same road, same hour. I shook my head, backing toward my cruiser. "This isn't real," I muttered. "It's a trick, a dream." He took a step forward, his boots silent against the wet ground. "You think you're awake?" he asked. "You think you made it back after that chase?" My breath caught in my throat. He pointed toward the pumps. "Go look," he said. "See for yourself." I didn't want to, but something in his tone, something desperate, pushed me. I turned and walked toward the pumps. The rain dripped from the edges of my hat, my flashlight beam trembling. At first, I didn't see anything, just puddles reflecting the flickering lights. Then I looked down and saw another reflection. Not mine. It was him, the other me, standing where I had just been. But his face was wrong now, bloated, pale, like he'd been underwater for days. And around his neck was the same scar. I stumbled back, heart pounding so hard it hurt. When I turned around, he was gone. The lot was empty again. No second cruiser, no figure, just my car, my breath, and the sound of rain. I ran to the door of the gas station, hoping the clerk was inside. But when I looked through the glass, the place was dark and empty. No shelves, no counter, just dust and shadow. And scrawled across the inside of the glass, written backwards so I could read it from where I stood, were 3 words: "Looking trunk." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to leave. Drive away, never look back. But I couldn't. My hands were shaking as I reached for the trunk release. The latch clicked, loud in the silence. The lid lifted slowly, and inside was a uniform, wet, torn, a badge still pinned to the chest. Badge number 412, the same as mine. The name tag was half covered in mud, but I could still make it out. My name. I stepped back, gasping for air, trying to find any explanation that made sense. None did. The world felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Then my radio crackled. A burst of static, then a voice. But it wasn't dispatch. It was mine. Sheriff, it said, slow and low, you were supposed to stop at the county line. The sound made my blood run cold. I dropped the radio, stumbling backward, and that's when I saw him again, standing in the fog by the pumps, motionless. He didn't speak this time. He just watched. The rain poured harder, washing over the lot until the puddles began to merge. The red reflection of my taillight spread across the water, glowing like a wound. And then, in that reflection, I saw both of us, me, standing in the rain, and him, staring back, until the two shapes started to blur together. I must have blacked out. When I came to, it was morning. The sky was gray. The rain had stopped. The gas station was still there, but it was boarded up, rotten wood, vines crawling over the pumps. No second cruiser. No man. No sign of life. But my trunk was still open, and the uniform was gone. Only the badge remained. Badge number 412, cold against the metal floor. I closed the lid and stood there for a long time, staring at the fog rolling over the hills. Part of me wanted to believe it was just exhaustion, hallucination, anything that made sense. But when I looked at my reflection in the cruiser window, I noticed something new, a faint line on my neck, a mark I didn't remember ever having before. And when I touched it, it burned. I used to think the road out of town was simple. 2 lanes, a few old farms, then the bridge that led over the creek and into the next county. But that was before Route 9 started playing tricks on me. Before I realized that no matter which way I turned, I always ended up back where I started. That night, I decided to try again. I told myself I just needed a clean drive. No radio, no stops, no distractions. Just me, the car, and the open road. But deep down, I knew what I was really doing. I was trying to leave something behind. Something that had been following me ever since the chase. It was 12:07 a.m. when I pulled onto Route 9. The fog was light at first, just a silver haze over the pavement, the kind that made the headlights feel smaller than they were. The road curved the way I remembered. The pine trees leaned in close, and somewhere far off, I thought I heard the hum of the lake. Everything felt the same, too much the same. I'd been driving that road my whole career. I knew every mile marker, every broken fence post. But tonight, the signs looked older, like they'd been left there decades ago. Rust on the edges, bullet holes through the letters. And when I passed the one that said, "Now leaving Blackridge County," I felt a strange relief wash over me. Except a few minutes later, I saw the same sign again. Same holes, same dent on the left corner, same patch of fog rolling through the ditch beside it. I hit the brakes. The engine hummed quietly as I sat there, staring at the sign through the windshield. The radio crackled once, a burst of static that sounded almost like a voice. Then silence again. I looked down at the clock. 12:07 a.m. Still, it hadn't changed. I turned off the engine and listened. Nothing but the wind. And yet, it felt like something was moving through the trees. That feeling again, the one that started after the gas station. Like the world had stopped turning. But I hadn't noticed until now. I tried to shake it off. Started the car again. Kept driving. The fog grew thicker, curling across the road like smoke. My headlights hit something pale ahead, a reflective surface. A sign. Same one. Now leaving Blackridge County. I laughed under my breath. A short, nervous sound. All right, I muttered, guess we're doing this again. But the laugh didn't help. My voice didn't sound right inside the car. It echoed like the cabin was too big, too empty. I rolled down the window to let the air in, and that's when I caught it. A faint smell of wet earth and something else. Sweet, rotten, like something had been buried too long and decided to crawl back up. A mile later, the fog broke for a moment, and there it was, the turn, a small dirt road leading off into the woods. I didn't remember being there before, but something about it felt right, like it had been waiting for me. The wooden sign at the corner read, Miller's Crossing. Faded letters, nails rusted deep. I turned without thinking. Gravel crunched under the tires, and the trees closed in overhead. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. No wind, no crickets, just the sound of the engine and my own heartbeat. Then the headlights caught something. A reflection. Metal. There was a car on the side of the path, half buried under leaves and branches. The front end was crushed, windshield shattered, vines twisting through the steering wheel. I slowed to a stop. The patrol lights on my dash flickered once, then died. My hands were trembling when I stepped out. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs. I brushed some branches aside and looked closer. The badge on the door was almost hidden beneath the mud, but I could still see the number, 412, my number, and the license plate was mine too. I stood there staring at it, waiting for my brain to come up with an explanation. None came. Inside the car, I could see the outline of a body slumped forward over the wheel. The skin was pale, stretched tight, uniform torn, hat still on. I took a step closer, and that's when I saw the face. It was me. The eyes were open, clouded, but somehow still aware. The mouth hung slightly open, as if it tried to say something before the end. I stumbled backward, gasping for air. No, I whispered. No, this isn't real. But it was. I could smell the decay, the metal, the faint trace of oil leaking into the soil. That car had been there for a long time, longer than it should have been. My mind was spinning. Maybe I'd gone mad. Maybe the stress, the long nights, the lack of sleep. Maybe it all caught up, but then I noticed something that tore through me like ice. The driver's radio, cracked, but still glowing faintly, was playing a recording. Static, then a voice. My voice. Dispatch. This is Unit 412. In pursuit of... The rest cut off in a screech of white noise. I dropped my flashlight. It hit the ground, beams spinning wildly over the dirt, over the trees, over the crushed hood. And for just a second, I saw a movement behind the car. Something standing in the dark. Tall, still, watching. I scrambled back into my cruiser and slammed the door shut. My breath came fast. Fog and glass. I turned the key. Nothing. Dead. The radio clicked on by itself. Static again. Then a voice. Calm. Steady. Mine. Sheriff. It said, "Why do you keep coming back here?" I froze. The voice continued, just above a whisper. "You should have stopped at the turn." My pulse hammered in my ears. I looked up, and through the windshield, I saw it again, the wooden sign, Miller's Crossing. But this time, the letters were carved deep dark as it burned into the wood. And beneath it, a smaller sign had appeared, one I hadn't seen before. It said, "Accident Site Sheriff R. Hayes, 1989. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 1989. That was 30 years ago, long before I was even hired. But when I looked down at the reflection in the rear-view mirror, the face staring back wasn't the one I knew. It was older, wrinkled, eyes dull and gray, and around the neck, that same faint scar I'd seen before, the mark I'd been pretending not to notice. The voice came through the radio again, only softer now, almost gentle. "You've been driving a long time, Sheriff." The static hissed. Time to rest. I looked at the clock on the dash. 12:07 a.m. Still, always, I reached for the handle to get out, but the door wouldn't open. The window wouldn't roll down. And when I looked outside, the trees were gone. Everything was gone. Just fog, stretching forever. A pale sea of nothing. And out there, faint and distant, I saw headlights. 2 beams cutting through the mist. A car approaching. Another cruiser. I pressed my face to the glass, trying to see the driver. But when it passed me, I recognized the face behind the wheel. Mine. Alive. Younger. Determined. chasing something through the fog. And then it was gone. The radio hissed one final time. Then I heard it. The faint hum of tires rolling on wet asphalt. Growing louder. Coming closer. It wasn't coming toward me. It was looping. Repeating. Over and over. Route 9. Miller's Crossing. The turn that isn't there. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Please, let me wake up." But the voice, my own voice, answered from the static. "You did. I don't know how long it's been now. Days. Years. It doesn't matter. Every night, the clock resets. 12:07 a.m. I drive. I find the turn. I see the wreck. And every time, I tell myself it'll be different, that I'll find a way out. But I never do, because there is no road out of town. Not for me. Not anymore. Just Route 9, and the turn that isn't there. And somewhere out in that endless fog, a younger me, still trying to escape, still chasing a ghost, still alive,